Welcome, dear friends, to a gentle journey through the quiet, winding lore of Naruto, that beloved story born from Masashi Kishimoto's imagination, a tale that began as a simple manga about a lonely boy dreaming of recognition and blossomed into a world of chakra, ancient clans, mystical creatures, and bonds that stretch across generations. Tonight, we drift through the histories of the shinobi world, from its earliest whispers to the tender threads that tie each character to one another, exploring origins, destinies, forgotten memories, and the soft heartbeat of a universe that has comforted millions since its debut. Let this be a slow, peaceful wandering through hidden villages, moonlit forests, and lives shaped by longing, hope, and quiet resolve. As you settle in, allow your breath to fall into a gentle rhythm. Feel the weight leave your shoulders, feel your mind soften as if sinking into a warm, familiar night. Let the world become still and give yourself permission to drift. And if you enjoy resting inside stories like these, you're welcome to subscribe and softly tell me where you're listening from tonight. Now, let your thoughts loosen, and we'll begin our walk through the shinobi world. Long before the names we have come to know, before Naruto, before the hidden leaf, before clans or symbols or stories of rivalry, there existed only a quiet world shaped by mystery, a world where the land itself seemed to breathe, where mountains held ancient memories, and where the sky watched silently over people who had not yet learned to understand the energy flowing within them. Tonight, we drift back to that distant age, not to witness strife or battles, but to feel the soft unfolding of a world discovering itself, one whisper at a time. Imagine the shinobi world as it was in its earliest dawn, forests stretching endlessly, rivers gliding with patience, and small communities living in harmony with nature because they had nothing else to rely on. Life was simple, shaped by the rhythms of the earth, harvesting food, tending to small families, sharing warmth under starlit nights. It was a world not yet stirred by chakra's shimmering presence, yet you can almost sense that something ancient and luminous waited beneath all things, like light beneath still water. In those early days, people sensed the world's quiet language, but could not yet understand it. They felt the pulse of the soil beneath their feet, the hum of the wind brushing over their homes, the way their own emotions sometimes aligned with the elements around them. Even without chakra, as they would later name it, there was an unspoken connection, an emotional, spiritual thread that tied humans to the vastness of the world. It was the beginning of something, though no one then could grasp how deeply it would shape their future. Legends speak of travelers who wandered the land, reflecting on its mysteries. Some sought meaning in the stars, studying their slow dance across the night sky. Others listened to the rivers, believing that certain currents carried hidden wisdom. These wanderers were not yet shinobi, but they carried the first seeds of curiosity, questions about life, existence, and the unseen forces guiding the world. Many of their thoughts were simple reflections whispered into the wind. Why do we feel connected to one another, even in silence? Why do our emotions sometimes echo in nature? Why does the world feel alive, as though it listens? Little by little, stories began to form. Gentle tales passed from one generation to another. Tales of certain individuals who could ease pain with a touch, or who sensed storms before clouds ever gathered, or whose presence alone seemed calming, as though they understood the natural energy far better than others. These stories spread softly through villages, not as accounts of power, but as quiet wonders. People spoke of such individuals with a kind of reverence, believing them to be blessed or simply more attuned to the world's rhythm. These early gifts were subtle, nothing like the abilities shinobi would one day possess, but in their simplicity, they carried beauty. A mother who could calm a frightened child with a warm hand and a steady breath. A wanderer who soothed tensions in a village simply by listening. A healer who sensed every emotion in the room, offering presence when words were not enough. These were small miracles that required no technique, only deep connection. Over generations, people began to gather around these naturally attuned individuals. They didn't call them clans yet. They were simply groups of families who felt safe together, comforted by those who carried the world's quiet knowledge. As these groups grew, subtle differences emerged, ways of thinking, ways of feeling, ways of approaching the mysteries of life. Some communities emphasized reflection and meditation, seeking harmony with nature. Others looked inward, studying memory, dreams, and intuition. Still others learned to read the quiet changes in the environment around them, sensing shifts in seasons or subtle patterns in the land. These early philosophies formed the foundation of what would later become powerful shinobi traditions. But in these ancient times, everything was soft, unstructured, almost dreamlike. There were no techniques, no ranks, no missions, only communities slowly learning how deeply connected they were to the world and to one another. As time passed, the world responded to this growing awareness. Those who meditated beneath waterfalls felt a gentle warmth rise through their bodies, as though the water recognized them. Those who reflected under moonlight sensed clarity in their thoughts. Those who walked through forests with reverence felt welcomed, as if the earth itself embraced them. The world seemed to speak more clearly, and people began to understand that this strange, warm presence, this energy that existed in all things, connected every life, every breath, every thought. It was not yet called chakra. It was known only as the flow, a word whispered softly, a concept felt more than understood. It was life's gentle hum, the pulse beneath existence, and slowly, communities began to teach their children how to sense this flow. They taught them to breathe deeply and feel the warmth in their chest. They taught them to observe nature with patience, listening not only with their ears, but with their hearts. Children grew up believing that the world was not a place to conquer, but a companion to travel with. And in this belief, something beautiful began to bloom. As each generation passed, sensing the flow became easier. The warmth became clearer. Movements became more attuned. Minds became calmer. And without realizing it, the people of this early world were preparing themselves for the transformation that would one day define their future. The origins of the shinobi world were not shaped by conflict or ambition, but by curiosity, reflection, and quiet connection. A world slowly awakening, like a mind drifting gently from sleep. A world learning to breathe, learning to feel, learning to remember. And in that softness, the foundations of everything to come were laid. As the world continued its slow awakening, the gentle awareness of the flow, the warm, quiet presence that connected all living things, began to gather people into communities that felt more like families than settlements. Those were the earliest clans, though no one called them that yet. They were groups of souls drawn together by the way they perceived the world, by shared reflections, by similarities in how they listened to life's quiet rhythms. Tonight, we drifted gently into their beginnings, imagining a time when every philosophy was born not from conflict, but from observation, tenderness, and the desire to understand the invisible threads that held the world together. The earliest clans formed in natural havens, small clearings, riverbanks, warm valleys, or sheltered forests, places where life felt harmonious and thoughtful. These early groups were not defined by power, but by the gentle practices they cherished. Some believed deeply in the quiet strength of memory, passing down stories, not as lessons, but as drifting lanterns of wisdom. Others found meaning in the body's movement, sensing that every gesture could resonate with the world. And some simply rested in contemplation, letting thoughts settle like dust beneath morning light. One of the first known groups gathered near a vast, ancient lake. They believed water was the world's memory, always moving, always reflecting, always holding pieces of the sky within its surface. They spent countless evenings by the shore, gazing across the stillness, learning to listen to the soft murmur of ripples. Over time, they noticed how their feelings influenced the water's surface, how calmness brought a smooth, mirror like reflection, and how unrest created faint tremors. This gentle observation became a central belief that our inner world shapes our outer world, and that peace within brings peace around us. Their teachings were simple. They encouraged deep breathing, slow reflection, and truthful expression of emotions. They were not called a clan at the time, but those who lived by the lake became known for their serenity and quiet insight. Their early meditations would later inspire techniques used by many shinobi, though the world would forget their name. Another early group formed high on mist covered mountains. Life on the peaks was gentle but demanding. Air grew thin, days grew quiet, and nights stretched endlessly beneath wide open skies. This group believed that stillness was the world's greatest teacher. They sat for hours watching clouds drift, studying the slow unfolding of dawn, or observing the way wind shaped the mountain's grasses. They learned to sense changes in the atmosphere, reading subtle shifts with quiet curiosity. From these practices grew a philosophy centered on presence, on being fully aware, fully awake, fully in harmony with life's smallest details. Their way of living taught them that each breath carries intention, each movement carries meaning, and each moment holds its own kind of truth. Over generations, these mountain dwellers became remarkably attuned to the natural world, able to sense changes long before they happened. Though they never sought recognition, their gentle approach would one day influence techniques rooted in perception and intuition. Far across the land, another early group lived in vast open fields where seasons changed with sweeping beauty. Their lives were shaped by cycles: planting, harvesting, the return of migrating birds, the slow shift of the stars. They believed deeply in continuity, in the idea that all things return in time. Their philosophy centered on patience and acceptance, trusting that life's rhythms eventually bring balance. They taught their children to observe patterns, to notice how everything in nature carried a quiet purpose, and to honor the idea that growth is often invisible until the moment it blossoms. Their teachings were filled with warmth, gentle reminders that waiting is not wasting, that growth happens softly, and that wisdom often arrives when the mind is calm enough to receive it. Many techniques later practiced in hidden leaf healing traditions can trace a faint, distant echo back to these early field dwellers. Meanwhile, in the deep forests, surrounded by towering trees whose roots held centuries of silent stories, another early group emerged. They believed that everything in the world possessed a living spirit. Every river, every branch, every stone warmed by sunlight. They walked gently, spoke softly, and treated nature with reverence, convinced that life was a shared conversation. They listened to the rustling leaves as though receiving guidance, and they cared for the forest as one would care for a beloved elder. Their philosophy taught that connection is sacred, that bonds form not only between people, but between all living things. They believed that by nurturing these connections, one could better understand the flow within themselves. This early reverence would later influence philosophies centered on compassion, empathy, and the emotional depth that shaped many future shinobi paths. Though these groups lived far apart, a quiet thread bound them together: the belief that life's mysteries were best approached with humility, patience, and a soft, open heart. Their teachings were never written, they were breathed, lived, and whispered from mentor to student, parent to child, friend to friend. And even though their names would be forgotten as the world grew more complex, their gentle philosophies continued to flow beneath the shinobi world like a hidden river. As generations passed, these groups became more defined. Children who grew up within these traditions carried them forward with devotion, shaping unique identities. Practices deepened, rituals formed, and slowly, these early communities began to resemble what future generations would recognize as clans, groups bound by shared beliefs rather than power, lineage, or ambition. But even then, in their earliest form, clans were soft things, woven from understanding, not hierarchy. They were shaped by the dreams of those who came before, by landscapes that nurtured them, and by a quiet desire to explore the mysteries of the flow more deeply. These early clans did not know that one day their teachings would become techniques, their meditations would become jutsu, and their philosophies would shape histories far beyond their imagination. They lived simply, gently, carrying within them the first sparks of what the shinobi world would become. And in that soft beginning, the world learned to grow. As the early clans continued to grow in their quiet philosophies, the world itself seemed to prepare for a moment of transformation, something profound, something that would shape the flow of chakra for all ages to come. In the soft cradle of ancient history, long before names were written in scrolls or spoken in legend, a single figure emerged, a presence who did not arrive with grandeur or intention, but with the simple, steady warmth of someone who understood the world more deeply than anyone before him. Tonight, we drift into the gentle origins of the one later known as the Sage of Six Paths, not as a warrior, but as a silent traveler who listened to the heartbeat of existence. In those early days, the world was still learning to breathe. The flow that connected all things shimmered softly, yet remained mysterious, like a dream half remembered upon waking. Many sensed it, many nurtured it, but none truly understood its nature. And then, in a quiet corner of the world, perhaps near mountains where clouds sank low, or in forests where sunlight filtered like drifting gold, there was born a child who seemed unusually attuned to the warmth of life. His name would one day become synonymous with enlightenment, but in the beginning He was simply a boy who felt the world with extraordinary gentleness. From a young age, he sensed the flow not as a distant whisper, but as a vivid presence. While other children played, he often sat still, eyes half closed, palms resting lightly upon the earth as though listening to its soft murmur. Animals drawn to warmth approached him without fear. Trees seemed to sway more softly when he passed beneath them, and in still moments he felt something inside him resonate with the vastness of the world, like a candle reflecting the light of a distant sun. His community didn't quite know how to describe him. They said he had an old soul, or that he carried the calm of many lifetimes. They watched as he grew, not into someone seeking greatness, but into someone seeking understanding. He wandered from village to village, mountain to mountain, forest to forest, carrying nothing but curiosity and a desire to listen. With each journey, his awareness deepened. He discovered that the flow within him mirrored the flow around him. When he breathed slowly, the world seemed to breathe with him. When he placed his hand upon the earth, he could sense echoes of memories older than human language. When he quieted his mind, he could feel the presence of every living thing, like stars glowing softly in the darkness of existence. It was during these wanderings that he began to understand chakra, not through technique or instruction, but through gentle experience. He realized that every thought, every intention, every heartbeat created ripples in the flow. That chakra was not merely energy, but a reflection of the soul, shaped by emotion, deepened by connection, and illuminated by understanding. It was a soft revelation, one that filled him with awe rather than ambition. As he grew older, people began to seek him out, drawn not by tales of power, but by the peace that surrounded him like a warm cloak. They approached with questions, quiet, trembling questions about life, purpose, connection, and the invisible threads that held their world together. And in return, he offered gentle guidance, not with authority, but with kindness. He taught that chakra flowed through all living things because all life was connected. He taught that understanding began with compassion and that clarity came from stillness. He taught that each person held a light within them, soft, steady, and capable of guiding not just their own path, but the paths of others. These teachings spread slowly, carried by those who felt their warmth. In time, people gave him a name, the Sage, not because he sought disciples, but because his presence eased burdens. His philosophy was simple, woven from quiet truths he had discovered throughout his wandering, that life held meaning in every breath, that connection was sacred, that power was never the goal, only awareness, that peace begins within, long before it reaches the world. But the sage's journey did not end with understanding. One day, while meditating beneath an ancient tree whose roots stretched deep into the earth, he sensed something immense moving beneath the world's surface, an ancient presence born not of malice, but of overwhelming instinct. This presence, later known as the Ten Tails, was not a creature of anger, but a force of nature, raw, untamed, and unable to distinguish its own strength from the world around it. The sage did not approach it as a warrior. He approached with compassion, sensing that the creature's overwhelming energy needed guidance, not destruction. Through calm intention and deep connection, he softened its wildness, weaving his own chakra gently into its vast essence. And in doing so, He brought harmony to a presence that had once wandered without awareness. This act of compassion would one day be remembered as a monumental feat, but in the sage's heart, it was simply an act of understanding, another way to bring balance to the world he loved so deeply. From this moment came new teachings. The sage shared the truth that chakra could bring harmony or imbalance, depending on the heart that guided it. He taught the importance of restraint, reflection, and responsibility. And as more people gathered to learn from him, the earliest foundations of what would one day become the shinobi path began to take shape. Yet even then, he did not seek to build a legacy. He simply wished to help people understand themselves, each other, and the world's gentle voice. As years passed, the sage's teachings spread across the land, planting seeds in countless hearts, seeds that would grow into clans, traditions, and philosophies. The shinobi world would one day take many forms, but at its root lay a single quiet truth. That connection shapes destiny, and that understanding begins with stillness. And so, the tale of the Sage of Six Paths, often told with grandeur in later ages, began simply, softly, like a ripple spreading across still water. As the Sage of Six Paths continued to wander the world with quiet understanding, a deeper truth slowly began to crystallize, one that would forever shape the nature of existence for all who came after him. This truth was chakra, not merely as energy, but as a living harmony between body, mind, and spirit. Tonight, we drift through its beginnings, tracing the soft, ancient origins of a force that would one day become the heartbeat of every shinobi's journey. In the earliest moments of the world, chakra existed only as a quiet current. It flowed beneath roots, within rivers, inside mountains, and through the breath of every living creature. But it was subtle, gentle enough that most never recognized its presence. They felt it only as intuition, as warmth, as moments of sudden clarity or unexpected calm. It lived in them like a hidden song, waiting, listening, humming softly beneath ordinary life. The sage, through years of wandering, came to understand this current more deeply than anyone before him. As he breathed slowly beneath the sky, he began to feel how chakra rose and fell like tides, how his emotions shaped its flow, how every living thing radiated its own quiet rhythm, and how the world itself breathed in harmony with all who existed upon it. One morning, as dawn spilled across the land in gentle gold, he sensed something new, a delicate alignment between his own heartbeat and the vastness around him. In that moment, the flow shimmered through him with clarity, as though the world had opened a window inside his spirit. It wasn't power, it wasn't force, it was understanding, a warm merging between his inner light and the great quietness of nature. This was the birth of chakra, as the sage understood it, not a weapon, but a bridge, a way of feeling the world more intimately, a way of connecting with life in its deepest form. He realized that chakra had always existed, woven through existence since the beginning of time. But until now, no one had known how to listen to it fully. And so, with calm intention, he began to guide others gently toward that same understanding. He taught that chakra began with breath, the slow rise and fall of the chest, the steady rhythm that anchored life. He encouraged stillness, inviting people to sense the warmth within their core, to observe how thoughts shaped energy, and to feel how compassion softened the flow, making it brighter and clearer. He taught that chakra responded most strongly to intention, to kindness, to clarity, to the deep desire to understand. People who once sensed only faint hints of the flow began to feel it more vividly. A mother comforting her child felt a warm pulse move through her hand. A teacher guiding a student discovered moments of clarity glowing within silence. A wanderer walking alone beneath moonlight sensed the world's presence as though wrapped in a gentle embrace. These experiences were subtle, far from the techniques that future generations would develop. They were quiet moments, soft, spiritual awakenings. But in them grew the first shared understanding of chakra as something sacred and deeply connected to the human heart. As more people gathered around the sage, he began to explain the nature of chakra in ways simple enough for anyone to feel. He spoke of physical energy born from the body, warm and life giving. He spoke of spiritual energy shaped by emotions, thoughts, and memories. And he explained that when these two intertwined harmoniously, chakra bloomed naturally within a person like a small flame sheltered from the wind. The early clans embraced these teachings with curiosity. The mountain dwellers used chakra to deepen their perception, sensing the world more clearly in the stillness of dawn. The river communities used it to calm emotions, letting their inner waters settle into peaceful clarity. The forest, people used it to strengthen their connection to nature, feeling the presence of trees and earth more vividly. And those in the open fields used chakra to better understand cycles of change, sensing how energy rose and fell within the world just as seasons turned. Each group discovered their own quiet way of experiencing chakra, and though none of them shaped it into techniques, each found that the world responded to them more warmly, as if recognizing their new sensitivity. The sage, observing these gentle transformations, began to share deeper insights. He taught that chakra held endless potential, not because it granted abilities, but because it allowed people to understand life more intimately. He taught that emotions guided its path, that fear clouded it, that anger disrupted it, but that love, hope, curiosity, and compassion helped it flow freely. He taught that every person carried a unique chakra signature, like a soft, glowing imprint of their heart. People listened, not in awe, but in gratitude. These teachings gave them a way to connect with themselves, with others, and with the world that had nurtured them since the beginning of time. As generations passed, the understanding of chakra deepened naturally. Children who grew up sensing its warmth developed sharper instincts. Healers discovered how to guide chakra to soothe aches or quiet restless thoughts. Elders used chakra in their meditations, finding clarity even in old age. And communities grew closer, bound not only by shared philosophies, but by the gentle, glowing awareness that each life touched another. It wasn't long before people began to experiment softly with chakra, trying to guide it through their limbs, to weave it into gestures, to harmonize it with breath. These early explorations were simple, graceful, almost like dances, and without realizing it, the earliest forms of what would one day become ninjutsu were beginning to take shape. Still, in these early days, everything remained gentle, exploratory, born of curiosity rather than ambition. The birth of chakra was not an eruption of power, but a quiet unfolding, like a seed opening beneath the soil, like dawn gradually softening the sky. It was a gift, a guide, and a reminder that every living soul carried within it a spark of the world's ancient light. And from that spark, the future would slowly grow. As chakra blossomed quietly across the world, guiding people toward deeper understanding, a new chapter began to take shape, one woven not from ambition, but from the desire for community, connection, and shared purpose. Tonight, we drift into the slow, patient rise of the great shinobi villages, imagining a time when the world, once scattered and uncertain, began to gather into places of warmth and belonging. For many generations, the early clans lived far apart, shaped by their landscapes and their gentle philosophies. Their lives were peaceful, steady, filled with contemplation and simple rhythms. Yet as Oxos, they grew in number, as chakra became more widely understood, a subtle longing began to settle across the land, a desire for unity, a wish to share knowledge, a quiet hope to bring people closer, not through necessity, but through the soft comfort of community. The world of that time was vast, with forests stretching endlessly, mountain ranges rising like guardians of the sky, and fields blooming in harmony with the passing seasons. Clans often met at natural borders, rivers, hillsides, shaded groves, and exchanged stories, teachings, and reflections. These gatherings were gentle, woven with laughter, shared meals, and a sense of connection that warmed the heart. Over time, these meetings grew more frequent, each one strengthening the threads between distant communities. And gradually, a realization began to bloom that the world felt kinder when people were near one another, that life was easier when shared, that wisdom spread more gently when hearts were close. From this shared longing, the idea of villages began to emerge, not as fortresses or political centers, but as sanctuaries, safe places where clans could live side by side, supporting one another, learning together, and cultivating the early practices of chakra in harmony. The first village did not rise from stone or strategy. It began as a gathering, a simple sharing of space under a canopy of tall trees where multiple clans had once met to exchange teachings. They built small homes near one another, weaving their traditions into a single gentle rhythm. The sounds of daily life, soft conversations, quiet training, shared meals, blended into a calm, living melody that carried through the trees like birdsong at dawn. This early settlement would one day become known as the Hidden Leaf Village, though in these ancient days it had no name. It was simply a place where people felt safe, a place where children from different clans chased fireflies under moonlight, where elders exchanged philosophies, where healers tended to all without distinction, and where the warmth of community grew stronger with each passing year. As word of this gathering spread, other clans across the land began to wonder if they too could create such a sanctuary. They traveled to lakesides, to mountain foothills, to sunlit valleys, searching for places that resonated with their hearts. And when they found locations where the earth felt welcoming and the air felt clear, they began to build. One group, who treasured clarity and open air, settled near vast plains where winds carried the scent of distant horizons. Their village grew around the idea of freedom and gentle resilience, shaped by the wide open sky that stretched endlessly above them. Another clan, drawn to warmth and reflection, built their homes near bubbling springs, where water shimmered with comforting energy. And in the peaceful quiet of the mountains, another community gathered beneath snowy peaks, their huts clustered like small lanterns, glowing against the cold. Each village formed naturally, as though guided by an unseen harmony in the world. The early founders saw themselves not as leaders, but as caretakers, those who tended to the land, protected the flow of chakra, and ensured that compassion remained at the heart of their communities. Back in the forest sanctuary, the early leaf settlement expanded with gentle purpose. Healers taught young ones how to feel the flow of chakra in their palms. Elders shared stories of the Sage of Six Paths, not as a distant legend, but as a quiet reminder of the world's interconnectedness. Artisans crafted tools and decorations reflecting the beauty of nature around them, wood carvings of leaves, flowing patterns inspired by the wind, small charms meant to bring calm and clarity. Life blossomed, steady and warm. As these villages grew, so too did the understanding of chakra. People discovered new ways to align breath and intention, new methods of meditation, new forms of gentle movement that harmonized mind and body. Early jutsu techniques, soft, simple, symbolic gestures of chakra, began to appear. They weren't used competitively or for conflict. They were expressions of connection, moving water with a touch of focus, lifting leaves into the air with a soft breath, guiding energy through the body to ease fatigue or soothe the heart. These early discoveries deepened the bonds within each village, reminding everyone that chakra, at its core, was a reflection of their inner world. The rise of the great villages brought comfort to many. For the first time, people felt a sense of belonging not just to their clans, but to something larger, an entire community built on shared intention. Children grew up surrounded by warmth and guidance. Young adults trained not to become warriors, but to become balanced individuals capable of supporting their families and contributing to the village's harmony. Even as the world slowly changed, the earliest villages remained places of reflection. Their foundations were woven from philosophies passed down for generations, teachings of compassion, patience, understanding, and the quiet belief that chakra existed to bring people closer, not push them apart. Though future generations would come to see villages as centers of power, their true origins were peaceful, gentle havens created through shared dreams and collective hope. They were reminders of a world where connection mattered more than strength, and where community blossomed from the simple act of choosing to live side by side. And so, the great shinobi villages began their long, winding journey, not through struggle, but through unity, not through dominance, but through warmth, a world growing slowly, softly, one gathering at a time. In the long story of the shinobi world, woven with ancient teachings and gentle awakenings, there eventually came a child whose presence would ripple softly through the hearts of generations. A small boy with bright eyes and an untamed spirit, carrying inside him a warmth he did not yet understand. Tonight, we drift quietly into the early years of Naruto Uzumaki, imagining his childhood not through the lens of hardship or conflict, but through the softer, quieter moments that shaped his tender beginnings. Naruto's earliest memories were filled with colors more than words. Sunlit mornings spilling through open windows, the cool scent of early Leaf Village air, the distant laughter of other children, and the gentle hum of a world he longed to feel closer to. He did not fully understand his place in the village, nor the circumstances that surrounded his birth. He only knew the sensation of wanting to belong, to be seen, to be recognized. And beneath all of that, he carried a small ember of hope that never faded. Every morning, Naruto would wake to the soft glow of dawn. Sometimes he would sit by his window with sleepy eyes and watched the village slowly come alive. Shopkeepers opening their doors, birds fluttering from rooftop to rooftop, shinobi heading out on early errands. The world moved with purpose, with rhythm, and though he often observed it from a distance, he felt a gentle yearning to be part of that movement. He dreamed of one day walking among them with confidence, carrying warmth in his chest rather than uncertainty. His days were simple, but filled with small wonders. He found joy in the rustling of leaves beneath his sandals, in the way wind threaded through every corner of the village, and in the soft warmth of the sun resting on his cheeks. He would wander to the training fields, watching older students practice with determination. Though he didn't yet have the skill to join them, he admired their focus, imagining himself doing the same someday. There was something comforting about watching others grow. It reminded him that he too had time to learn, time to become someone he could be proud of. Sometimes he found himself drawn to quiet corners of the village, places where people seldom walked. He would sit near the edge of a small stream just outside the main district, listening to water glide over stones. The gentle sounds eased the restlessness inside him, helping him breathe more slowly, more peacefully. In these moments, he felt connected to something larger than himself, as though the world whispered soft encouragement. You belong here, even if you do not see it yet. Naruto often felt alone, but he was never truly without light. Inside him lived a spark, bright and resilient, that guided him gently through each day. He kept this spark alive with small rituals that brought comfort, practicing simple movements he had seen other shinobi perform, sketching crude versions of village symbols in the dirt, or imagining conversations with the people he admired. These quiet practices shaped his inner world, strengthening his heart long before he had the training to shape his skills. Every so often, the third Hokage would watch Naruto from afar, observing him with a soft, knowing smile. He understood the child's loneliness, but he also saw the hope burning inside him, like a tiny flame refusing to fade. When Naruto visited the Hokage's office, sometimes out of curiosity, sometimes simply because he needed a kind presence, the old man greeted him with warmth. He would offer gentle words, not explanations, but reminders that Naruto mattered and that his story was only beginning. These interactions were small, but to Naruto they were anchors, moments of warmth he carried into the evenings when he felt the quiet weight of being different. In school, Naruto struggled with lessons, not because he lacked talent, but because his mind often drifted toward dreams of what he wished to become. He imagined himself a hero, someone admired, someone capable, someone embraced by the village. During class, his thoughts floated like clouds beyond the windows, drifting toward futures only he could see. Yet even in these moments of distraction, he carried a gentle determination. He wanted to grow. He wanted to learn. He wanted his heart to shine as brightly in reality as it did in his imagination. Despite his challenges, Naruto had a way of bringing warmth into spaces he entered. His laughter, though sometimes loud, carried sincerity. His mistakes, though frequent, were rooted in enthusiasm, and his dreams, though grand, were grounded in the simple desire to be accepted. There was something endearing about the way he approached life, falling, rising, trying again, not with resentment, but with a quiet, persistent hope that tomorrow would be brighter. The villagers, though distant, still watched him grow. They saw his persistence, his stubborn optimism, the way he returned each day with renewed effort. And though they didn't yet know how to embrace him, some part of them sensed that Naruto possessed a light the world would one day need, a light born from loneliness, but destined to become warmth for others. At night, Naruto often lay awake beneath soft blankets, gazing at the ceiling as though searching for answers hidden in the silence. He would whisper dreams to himself, not loudly, but in a gentle murmur meant for his own heart. He imagined being surrounded by friends, imagined sharing meals, imagined laughter echoing around him. He imagined being someone who made the world a little brighter, and with each quiet wish, his spark grew a little stronger. Naruto's childhood was not defined by power or recognition, but by the slow, steady shaping of his heart, a heart that learned patience, a heart that discovered its own warmth, a heart that refused to dim even when tested by solitude. It was from this gentle beginning, from this quiet, resilient child, that the future of the shinobi world would eventually bloom. As Naruto grew, carrying his small spark of resilience through the quiet pathways of his childhood, life slowly guided him toward others whose presence would shape his heart in ways he could never have imagined. Tonight, we drift into the dawn of Team 7, not as a story of missions or battles, but as a gentle unfolding of connection. Three young souls and a teacher whose lives began to intertwine like threads in a tapestry slowly woven by the hands of fate. The day Naruto was placed on a team felt different from the days before it. He had grown used to wandering alone, used to dreaming alone, used to imagining bonds he had not yet experienced. And so, when he learned that he would train alongside two classmates, Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha, his heart stirred with a mixture of hope and trembling anticipation. Not fear, just a sense of stepping into the unknown, like walking barefoot into a quiet forest at dusk. He didn't know what to expect, but he hoped. He hoped with the full, unguarded sincerity that only someone who has felt loneliness can hold. Sakura arrived with a soft brightness of her own, a gentle intelligence that shimmered through her thoughts, and a desire to prove herself not only to others, but to the quiet uncertainty within her. She carried a kindness she didn't always show openly, but it lived there, subtle and sincere. In her presence, Naruto sensed warmth he couldn't quite name. And then there was Sasuke, quiet, composed, a boy whose gaze seemed fixed on distances no one else could see. He moved with calm certainty, with a silence shaped by memories he seldom shared. Yet beneath that stillness lived something delicate, a quiet longing, a heaviness softened only in rare moments when he allowed himself to breathe freely. Naruto didn't understand Sasuke, not at first, but he felt drawn to him, not in rivalry or comparison, but in the way one might feel drawn to a familiar but distant melody. Three children, close in age, yet carrying different kinds of quiet inside them. Their first meeting with their teacher, Kakashi Hatake, set the tone for something gentle and unexpected. Kakashi, with his calm presence and unreadable expression, arrived not to instruct with authority, but to observe with patience. He carried his own stillness, one shaped by experience, loss, wisdom, and a heart that had learned to heal slowly. Yet within him was a softness, a quiet understanding that made him uniquely suited to guide these three children toward themselves. Their early days together were filled with simple interactions. sitting beneath trees during breaks, sharing small conversations, watching Kakashi demonstrate exercises with effortless grace, learning to coordinate movements, breaths, and intentions. Each moment was quiet, but within these small moments, something warm began to form. Naruto, who had longed for connection, watched his teammates with wide, curious eyes. When Sakura spoke, he listened with genuine interest. When Sasuke practiced with focus and discipline, Naruto felt inspired, not in competition, but in admiration. And when Kakashi offered advice, Naruto's heart absorbed every word like soft soil welcoming rain. Sakura, too, found herself observing her teammates in quiet reflection. She noticed Naruto's earnest effort, how he tried again and again, even when unsure of himself. She noticed Sasuke's steadiness, the calm precision in his movements, and the rare, fleeting softness in his eyes when he relaxed. She noticed Kakashi's gentle watchfulness, the way he encouraged without pressure, allowing each of them to grow at their own pace. And Sasuke, though quieter than the others, began to sense something shifting within himself. He found Naruto's presence strangely grounding, like a light that nudged him gently toward connection without demanding it. He found Sakura's sincerity comforting, her quiet strength something he hadn't expected to appreciate, and he found Kakashi's silent guidance reassuring, a reminder that even those who had known shadows could still create spaces filled with calm and warmth. Team 7's training was not simply physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. They learned to breathe together, to move together, to trust in the rhythm of one another's presence. Kakashi often watched them from a distance, sensing the fragile beginnings of a bond forming between them, a bond that needed time, patience, and gentle nurturing. Their days were filled with soft, memorable moments. A morning spent practicing balance on the quiet surface of a pond, the water rippling lightly beneath their feet. An afternoon sharing simple lunches beneath a cluster of tall trees, sunlight filtering through leaves in shifting patterns. Evenings returning through the village together, footsteps blending into steady harmony as the world around them dimmed into twilight. In these moments, the boundaries between them softened. They began to understand one another in ways words could never fully capture. Naruto learned that Sakura carried insecurities behind her bright determination. Sakura learned that Sasuke's silence was not coldness, but a delicate space he protected carefully. Sasuke learned that Naruto's loudness hid a deep well of tenderness and longing, and Kakashi learned that these three, so different on the surface, shared a common thread, a desire to connect, to be understood, to find belonging. The first time they truly felt like a team was during a quiet exercise Kakashi introduced, sitting in a circle, eyes closed, sensing one another's presence, feeling each breath, each small movement, each ripple of chakra flowing gently between them. At first, they felt awkward, uncertain, but slowly the air around them warmed, their energies aligned like notes in a soft melody. And when they opened their eyes, there was a subtle shift, a newfound understanding, delicate but real. Team 7 had not yet faced trials together. They had not yet been tested or transformed. But even in these early days, a bond was forming, one made not of conflict or mission, but of small, meaningful moments of connection. Naruto found companionship he had longed for. Sakura found encouragement she had quietly needed. Sasuke found a warmth he had not expected to feel again. Kakashi found hope, seeing in them the potential to grow together in ways that could touch the world. And as the sun rose and set over the Leaf Village, Team Seven's story began to gently unfold, like a flower blooming slowly in morning light. As Team 7 continued to grow in the quiet rhythm of shared days, the world around them gently widened. Their training, once simple and filled with small discoveries, began to lead them toward new experiences, moments where the village invited young shinobi to step a little further into themselves, to explore the beginnings of their potential. In this soft unfolding, the Chunin exams emerged not as a trial of conflict, but as a symbolic threshold, a ceremony of growth meant to help each young soul understand their place in the broader flow of the shinobi world. For Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke, the exams represented something more than advancement. They were an invitation to witness how large, varied, and connected the world truly was. Until then, their perspective had been shaped mostly by the familiar paths of the Leaf Village, the training fields, the shaded forests, the warm streets lined with shops and conversations. The exams, however, brought people from distant villages, each carrying their own philosophies, histories, and gentle traditions. It was as though the world itself had gathered quietly before them. When the announcement came, Naruto felt a soft flutter inside him, not anxiety, but anticipation. He had spent so much of his life longing to be part of something larger, wondering whether the world had a place for him. The Chunin exams felt like a doorway gently opening, inviting him to step through not with bravado, but with curiosity. Sakura too felt a tender stirring, a desire to measure her growth, to understand how far she had come, and to see herself beyond the limits she had once believed in. And Sasuke, ever quiet, sensed something inside him shift, as though the path he walked was widening, offering new spaces in which to breathe. Kakashi watched them with a calm, observant gaze. He knew this moment would shape them in ways simple training could not. Not through tests of strength, but through the quiet revelations that come when one sees the world from a broader vantage, when one realizes that their story is but a single thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry. The early stages of the exams were gentle, filled with moments of reflection and observation. The trio encountered teams from other villages, each group carrying its own unique atmosphere. Some radiated serenity, others deep focus, others playful curiosity. Naruto found himself fascinated by them all, sensing the subtle differences in their chakra, the way they moved, the quiet stories they carried in their eyes. Each new face reminded him that the world was far wider than he had ever imagined. Sakura observed with thoughtful care, noticing the unique approaches each team brought into the room. She felt her mind quietly expand, understanding that knowledge came in many forms, not just books and lectures, but in watching how others approached life. She began to sense her own strengths, a sharp mind, a steady heart, an ability to see nuances others overlooked. Sasuke, meanwhile, experienced something subtle but profound. Seeing so many paths woven together made him feel for the first time in a long while that he was not alone on his journey. Other children carried quiet heaviness. Other children carried gentle dreams. The exams became less about competition and more about recognition and acknowledgement that even the young carried worlds within them. Throughout this process, the trio felt the world unfolding softly before them. The spaciousness of the exam hall, the murmur of voices, the shimmering presence of chakra filling the air. Everything felt like a gentle reminder that they were part of something greater. Naruto felt inspired, Sakura felt awakened, Sasuke felt quietly grounded. As the exams progressed, the forest phase approached, often remembered for its challenges, but here we drift through it as a place of quiet observation and natural reflection. The forest stood vast and ancient, its canopy filtering sunlight into shifting patterns of green and gold. Instead of danger, the trio felt awe. Leaves whispered secrets as wind wove through branches. Streams murmured softly, guiding their steps. In that forest, they learned to trust one another in deeper, quieter ways. Naruto discovered that his teammates offered steady grounding when his thoughts became scattered. Sakura learned to rely on her intuition, listening not only to the world, but to her own heart. Sasuke allowed himself to soften just enough to let their presence in, recognizing that growth often happens when one permits themselves to lean gently on others. They emerged not with exhaustion, but with a new sense of unity. The forest had taught them something precious, not how to prove themselves, but how to move together in harmony. Then came the preliminaries, an opportunity for self expression rather than confrontation. Each participant stepped forward to show their growth, their individual style, their quiet strengths. Naruto approached with heartfelt sincerity, pouring his longing into his movements. Sakura approached with clarity, demonstrating the discipline she had cultivated through careful study. Sasuke approached with calm determination, each step reflecting the balance he sought within himself. Beyond technique, what mattered most was the inner unfolding, the dawning realization that they were becoming more aware, more attuned, more connected to the world and to one another. As the final stage approached, the stadium filled not with noise, but with a soft hum of anticipation. The village gathered, too, witness the blossoming of its young shinobi, not to judge them, but to celebrate their growth. Naruto gazed around in wonder, seeing faces from every corner of the village, people of all ages coming together as a single community. Sakura felt gratitude gently warm her chest, understanding that she was supported in ways she hadn't always realized. Sasuke felt a deep, quiet stillness settle within him, a recognition that he was exactly where he needed to be. Through the Chunin exams, Team 7 did more than advance along the shinobi path. They opened themselves to the world, and in return, the world opened itself to them. They grew not through triumph, but through understanding, not through proving their worth, but through discovering the inner light that had been there all along. And with this new awareness, their journey continued, softly, slowly, like dawn spreading across the sky. In the heart of the shinobi world, nestled among forests that whispered with age, lay a village shaped by memories older than its youngest generations ever realized. Tonight, we drift softly into the gentle histories of the hidden leaf, stories not of conflict, but of quiet beginnings, tender traditions, and the subtle foundations that guided the village long before Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke walked its pathways. The Leaf Village was born from a dream, one woven between clans who longed for connection, safety, and shared purpose. Though the world knew the stories of great leaders and ancient agreements, there existed a softer tale beneath it all, the tale of people who simply wanted to build a home, a sanctuary where children could grow without fear, where elders could pass down wisdom, and where the flow of chakra was nurtured with warmth rather than uncertainty. Long before the Hokage monument was carved into the mountainside, that very cliff was a quiet place of solitude. Travelers would climb its rocky path to watch morning light spill across the land. The forest stretched endlessly below, a vast sea of green shifting gently in the wind. Birds circled above in slow, peaceful arcs. The village grounds were once open and untouched, waiting for the first homes to rise like small lanterns scattered across the earth. Even then, those who stood atop the cliff felt that the land was listening, inviting them to build something meaningful. As the village formed, traditions blossomed naturally. Early architects shaped their homes to mirror the surrounding environment. Wooden beams that echoed the strength of trees, sloped roofs that welcomed rainfall like a soft visitor, and open spaces that allowed sunlight to drift through in warm, comforting patterns. People gathered outdoors often, sitting beneath ancient trees to share stories, food, and quiet companionship. These gatherings were the earliest sparks of what would one day become the village's strong sense of community. In those early days, chakra was still understood with gentle reverence. Elders taught children how to sense the flow beneath their feet when they walked among the trees. They encouraged them to place their palms on the earth, to listen to the hum of insects, to breathe with the rhythm of the wind. The hidden leaf became a place where learning was not limited to books or technique, but to the subtle teachings of nature itself. Every season brought its own traditions. In spring, villagers decorated entrances with small arrangements of fresh blossoms, symbolizing renewal. In summer, families lit paper lanterns and set them along pathways, marking the longest days with soft, glowing light. Autumn carried festivals of gratitude, simple gatherings where harvests were shared freely. And winter brought quiet evenings filled with storytelling, where elders recounted memories of the first clans who dared to dream of unity. These gentle rhythms helped shape the leaf's spirit, steady, hopeful, connected. As the generations passed, the figure of the Hokage became a symbol not of authority, but of caretaking. Each Hokage contributed their own warmth to the village's identity. The first Hokage was remembered for his calm presence, like a tree with roots deep enough to steady the land. The second was remembered for his dedication to structure and stability, ensuring the village could flourish for ages to come. The third, who would guide Naruto's childhood, became a quiet guardian, watching the village grow with gentle eyes, offering wisdom where needed, and nurturing hope even in challenging times. The village's stories were etched not only in buildings and tradition, but in the small places people passed each day. The markets, for example, held their own quiet history. Their earliest booths were simple wooden frames covered with woven cloth, offering fresh produce, handmade craftwork, and herbal medicines. Over time, these markets became the heart of daily life. Children ran between stalls, elders chatted with familiar merchants, scent trails of warm food drifted through the air. For Naruto, these markets were among the first places he felt the warmth of community, even if he didn't fully recognize it then. The small smiles, the familiar faces, the comforting smells, all of it wrapped around him like a subtle embrace. Then there were the training fields, scattered like peaceful clearings around the village. Long before shinobi practiced techniques there, they served as places of reflection. Villagers would visit to feel the soft breezes moving across the grass. Couples strolled through them at dusk. Parents brought children to let them run freely under open skies. When the shinobi academies eventually developed, these fields became spaces where inner growth began, not through strenuous training, but through learning to sense the quiet within oneself. The academy itself held a gentle history too, while later generations associated it with exams, lessons, and youthful anxieties. Its original purpose had simply been to guide young ones toward self understanding. Early teachers believed deeply that a strong heart made a strong shinobi, and so classrooms were filled with lessons of cooperation, empathy, and patience. Naruto's early days at the academy, though often tangled with distraction and restlessness, still carried echoes of these teachings. In subtle ways, they shaped his growth even when he didn't realize it. Beyond these structures and traditions, the greatest quiet history of the leaf lay in its people. Families who tended gardens with care passed down seeds that had grown in the village for generations. Artisans who carved wood inherited techniques whispered from teacher to student over centuries. Healers who blended herbs carried knowledge older than the village itself, and children born into the leaf inherited not only a home, but a deep, invisible network of stories, memories, and gentle wisdom that shaped the rhythm of their lives. All these soft histories flowed beneath the surface, unseen yet always present, like roots holding the village steady. And for Naruto, walking through these places as a child, these histories quietly embraced him. Every stone pathway he stepped on carried memories of those who came before. Every breeze that brushed his hair carried whispers of the early village founders. Every sunrise that illuminated his window carried the same warm promise villagers had felt for generations, that each day was a chance to grow, to connect, and to become part of something larger. The Hidden Leaf Village was more than a home. It was a living story, gentle, patient, and always unfolding. Long before Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke found their place within Team 7, the Leaf Village had been shaped by another trio, a generation whose presence lingered softly in the village's spiritual memory. Tonight, we drift into the quiet journeys of Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, the three students once guided by the gentle wisdom of the third Hokage. Their stories are often remembered in grand, dramatic tones, but here we explore them through the calmer, quieter lens of childhood, growth, and the soft threads of connection that formed between them. In their earliest days, the three were simply children, curious, wide eyed, and shaped by dreams unique to each of their hearts. They trained beneath the warm gaze of their teacher, a man who believed deeply in nurturing the goodness within every soul. And though the trio would one day walk separate paths, their beginnings were intertwined with gentle bonds of learning, laughter, and moments that carried the warmth of dawn. Jiraiya, even as a child, carried a restless spirit, bright, wandering, always seeking new experiences. He was the kind of boy who found wonder in everything: the ripple of water over stones, the drifting clouds overhead, the distant call of birds echoing through the forest. He had an imagination that stretched far beyond the village, filled with stories yet to be written and adventures waiting quietly just beyond the horizon. Beneath his playful energy lived a tender heart that longed to grow, to understand the worlds, and to share its mysteries with others. Tsunade, in contrast, carried a strength that shone with quiet dignity. Even in her youth, she moved with purpose, steady, confident, grounded. She possessed a natural talent for understanding the body, the mind, and the delicate rhythms of life. Yet beneath her strength existed a softness she seldom revealed, a gentle compassion that shaped her every instinct. She carried within her the promise of healing, the desire to protect life, and the quiet hope that her abilities could help ease the burdens of others. And then there was Orochimaru, mysterious, contemplative, always observing the world with a depth unusual for someone so young. His eyes often carried a distant, reflective quality, as though he sensed patterns hidden from ordinary view. He spoke rarely, not out of coldness, but because he listened so intently. There was a stillness about him, a quiet curiosity that drove him to understand the unseen layers of existence. He approached life like a puzzle to be solved, studying every detail with calm fascination. Together, the three formed a triangle of balance: lightness, strength, and quiet insight. Their personalities differed, but their energies harmonized in a way only fate could have woven. Under their teacher's guidance, they practiced basic forms, meditated beneath the steady rustle of leaves, and learned to sense the flow of chakra in their own unique ways. Their training sessions were filled with small, meaningful moments. Jiraiya would often attempt techniques with enthusiasm that made Tsunade laugh softly despite herself. Orochimaru, patient and precise, would quietly adjust a stance or point out a subtle detail others overlooked. Tsunade, with her intuitive understanding of movement, often found herself gently correcting both of them. Their teacher watched them with a serene smile, sensing the bright potential wrapped tenderly within each of their hearts. Outside of training, their bond grew even deeper. They shared meals beneath shaded awnings, exchanged stories at twilight, and walked home together through peaceful pathways illuminated by lantern light. The village was quieter then, still growing, still forming its identity. In that calm environment, the trio's childhood blossomed like flowers opening beneath the spring sun. As they matured, each followed a path shaped not by fame, but by their inner callings. Jiraiya became a traveler, drawn to the wide world like a leaf carried gently by wind. His journeys were not escapes, but explorations, opportunities to learn from distant cultures, to meet people whose perspectives broadened his understanding, and to gather stories he would one day share with future students. His heart expanded with every step, growing warmer, wiser, and more attuned to the world's quiet beauty. Tsunade, guided by compassion, devoted herself to healing. She studied it tirelessly, seeking ways to ease suffering and bring comfort to those in need. Her gentle touch, her steady hands, and her deep empathy made her a beacon of hope. She carried the weight of others' pain with grace, transforming sorrow into strength and fear into encouragement. Through her, the healing arts blossomed into something profound, an embodiment of care that resonated through generations. Orochimaru, with his contemplative nature, dedicated himself to understanding the mysteries of life. His curiosity, often misunderstood, stemmed from a desire to comprehend the deeper truths of existence. He studied with a quiet dedication that few could match, exploring questions others feared to ask. In his own way, he sought meaning, searching for answers that drifted just beyond human understanding. His journey was one of introspection, complexity, and a yearning for enlightenment. Though their paths diverged, the thread that connected them never fully disappeared. They carried memories of one another in small, tender ways. Jiraiya remembering Tsunade's strength and Orochimaru's quiet insight. Tsunade recalling Jiraiya's warmth and Orochimaru's precision, and Orochimaru holding on to the rare, peaceful moments they once shared beneath their teacher's guidance. Their stories endured in the Leaf Village, passed down through whispers, memories, and gentle admiration. To the younger generation, the Sanin became symbols not of power, but of possibility. Individuals who followed their hearts, embraced their unique ways of being, and shaped the world simply by becoming themselves. For Naruto, these three figures would one day hold profound significance. Jiraiya's wisdom would become a lantern in the dark. Tsunade's strength would become a source of stability, and Orochimaru's complexities would become lessons in understanding the many shades of the human spirit. But in these quiet early days, the Sanin were simply young souls discovering who they were, growing, learning, and creating ripples that would one day reach far beyond their own time. And as the Leaf Village moved gently into the future, the echoes of their footsteps lingered in its pathways, reminding all who listened that every journey begins with a single, quiet moment of becoming. Long before Naruto took his first breath, before the villages built homes across the land, before the shinobi world even understood the full depth of chakra, there existed beings born from something ancient, vast, and quietly sacred. Tonight, we drift softly into the story of the tailed beasts, not as creatures of power or fear, but as embodiments of nature's deepest emotions, patterns, and quiet truths. Their story begins with the Sage of Six Paths, whose understanding of chakra was so profound that he could feel the world's energies hum like a quiet song beneath everything. When he sensed the overwhelming presence of the 10 tails, he perceived its chakra not as chaos, but as something that longed to belong, something immense and unshaped, like a cloud searching for form. In a moment of deep compassion, the sage gently divided this vast essence into 9 smaller beings, giving each its own consciousness, its own spirit, its own soft spark of individuality. These 9 beings were not created to be feared, they were created to be free. The world welcomed them like new stars in the night sky, each glowing with its own hue, its own personality, its own gentle mystery. The first was Shukaku, whose chakra flowed like shifting sand. Though often remembered for its restlessness, Shukaku's essence was rooted in change, like dunes reshaped by wind, always moving, always evolving. At heart, Shukaku carried a deep longing for stability, seeking a place where its swirling emotions could settle into peace. It roamed deserts and sunlit valleys, listening to the quiet patterns of the earth. Next came Matatabi, a creature of blue, dancing flames. Yet these flames did not burn. They warmed, they illuminated. Matatabi's chakra shimmered with a gentle duality, inner strength wrapped in soft, quiet grace. Wherever it wandered, nighttime paths glowed faintly with its presence, guiding travelers who felt lost in the dark. Asobu, the third, carried the calm depth of oceans. Its gentle nature was shaped by introspection, slow, thoughtful, and deeply connected to the rhythm of the tides. Wherever Isobu rested, waters grew clearer, reflecting the sky as though inviting the world to pause and breathe. Son Goku embodied the ancient warmth of the earth's core. Its chakra pulsed with the quiet steadiness of mountains, offering comfort to those who approached with respect. Its presence reminded the world that strength and gentleness can exist in perfect balance. Kokuo the fifth carried an energy both powerful and tranquil, like a running river that moves with purpose but never rushes. Its chakra flowed like breath, steady, calm, and grounding. Animals often gathered peacefully around it, sensing its serene nature. Saiken, soft and luminous, shimmered like mist drifting through morning forests. Gentle and curious, it explored the world with a light-hearted stillness, embodying the innocence of rain clouds traveling across the sky. It carried within it a playful purity, untouched by fear. Chomei radiated bright, soothing light, its wings glimmering like fragments of dawn. It loved open skies and high breezes, drifting over mountains with the freedom of a dream. Its presence brought clarity and renewal, as though every beat of its wings whispered begin again. Gyuki, with its calm gaze, carried the wisdom of deep forests and ancient rivers. Though often imagined as formidable, in truth it held a quiet patience. Its chakra resonated like the low hum of the earth, steady, protective, and gentle in its stillness. And finally, Kurama, the creature whose chakra glowed like a deep burning ember. Kurama was born with immense inner warmth, intense, emotional, and profound. Its heart carried a longing to be understood, to be welcomed, to be seen not as overwhelming, but as whole. Kurama's energy pulsed with ancient emotion, rich with complexity and quiet yearning. In a calmer world, Kurama would have been a symbol of passion, of the strength that comes from vulnerability. Each tailed beast was unique. Each represented a fragment of emotion, a whisper of nature, a piece of the ten tails transformed into individuality. Together, they reflected the world's many moods: joy, restlessness, introspection, clarity, warmth, mystery, wisdom, renewal, and deep feeling. They traveled the land freely, discovering its mountains, rivers, forests, and skies. Some enjoyed solitude, others companionship, yet all of them carried a gentle wonder toward the world they had been born into. The Sage of Six Paths watched over them not as a master, but as a guardian who cherished their individuality. He spoke to them often, offering guidance through quiet stories and moments of reflection. He wanted them to understand that they were not fragments of something lost, but complete beings with lives of their own. Before he eventually departed the world, he entrusted them with a final wish, one rooted not in fear, but in hope. "You are all part of the same light," he whispered, "each of you connected by the world that holds you. Find your own paths, and when you feel lonely, remember that none of you are truly alone." The tailed beasts carried these words in their hearts. They wandered through ages, sometimes watching humans from afar, sometimes feeling the warmth of human compassion when it appeared. They witnessed the rise of villages, the growth of traditions, the blossoming of generations. Their journeys were long, but never meaningless. Each step they took shaped the world quietly, like waves shaping a shore. And though the shinobi worlds would one day misunderstand them, their story, at its core, remained gentle. It was a story of beings created from compassion, carrying within them the emotions of a world learning slowly how to understand itself. For Naruto, these beings would one day become deeply woven into his own journey. But long before that, they existed like distant constellations, shining, wandering, waiting for the moment when someone with a warm, open heart would see them not as myths, but as souls. As the seasons drifted quietly across the Leaf Village, Naruto began to step more fully into the path that awaited him. His early days of longing and uncertainty slowly gave way to moments of discovery, small, steady steps that shaped his spirit with tenderness. Tonight, we drifted gently into these years of growth, not through the challenges he faced, but through the soft echoes of his training, the warmth of mentorship, and the gentle ways his heart continued to unfold. Naruto's journey toward becoming a shinobi did not begin with sudden transformation. It began with patience, morning after morning, breath after breath, effort layered gently upon effort. His training days were filled with simple routines, waking early, stretching beneath the golden light of dawn, practicing basic movements until they felt natural, and learning to align his breath with the quiet hum of chakra inside him. He often trained alone at first, standing in peaceful clearings where sunlight filtered through tall trees like drifting strands of gold. The air carried the scent of leaves and earth. Birds settled on branches above him, watching with soft curiosity. In these quiet hours, Naruto felt something warm unfold inside his chest, an awareness that training was not only about strengthening the body, but about listening to the heart. He learned to steady his breath and to let his thoughts settle like dust floating gently to the ground. He learned to feel the flicker of chakra within him, not as wild energy, but as a soft flame that responded to emotion, intention, and belief. Every small improvement brought a flicker of wonder, like discovering new light inside himself. As he practiced, the memories of his lonely childhood softened. The world that had once felt distant now felt closer, warmer, filled with possibilities he had only dared to dream of before. Kakashi guided him gently through this transformation. He never pressured Naruto. He never compared him to others. Instead, he offered quiet encouragement in subtle ways, an approving nod during training, a gentle correction to his stance, a small word of guidance that helped Naruto understand the deeper currents within chakra. Kakashi taught him that strength was not an explosion of power, but the quiet discipline of returning to practice again and again, even when progress felt invisible. Naruto took these lessons to heart, carrying them into every movement, every breath. Slowly, his confidence grew, not from external praise, but from the discovery that he could shape his own path through patience. During these years, Naruto also began to understand the value of connection. Training with Sakura and Sasuke brought new lessons, lessons in coordination, trust, and sensing the subtle rhythms of others' energy. Sakura's careful precision inspired him to pay more attention to details. Sasuke's calm focus taught him the beauty of quiet concentration. Naruto, in return, brought warmth and determination to their teamwork, reminding them that growth often begins with the courage to try. One of Naruto's most meaningful moments of growth came not through skill, but through companionship. The arrival of Jiraiya, unexpected and larger than life, brought into Naruto's world a new sense of belonging. Jiraiya saw in him a spark that had been growing quietly since childhood, a spark waiting for guidance, patience, and understanding. Their training sessions together were filled with warmth. Jiraiya taught him not simply how to shape chakra, but how to shape intention, how to let emotion flow smoothly, how to direct energy with clarity rather than force, how to balance seriousness with lightheartedness. He helped Naruto feel that his heart, once lonely, could expand into something strong enough to embrace others. Jiraiya often reminded him that mastery came not from talent, but from the willingness to return to the basics again and again. Naruto embraced this philosophy with sincerity. He practiced late into evenings when the sky glowed with soft purple hues. He trained through the quiet hum of cicadas, through the whisper of leaves, through the gentle stillness of nightfall. Each moment added another layer of growth, another step toward the person he was becoming. And yet, Naruto's progress was not linear. Some days felt slow, heavy, filled with doubt. But even in those moments, he kept moving. He remembered the lonely boy he once was and felt compassion for him, letting that memory fuel his desire to grow. He believed that if he kept trying, he could become someone who lit up the world, not out of pride, but out of the longing to give others the warmth he had once needed so dearly. Through his training, Naruto began to sense a deeper truth. That strength wasn't something granted. It was something built gently, patiently, like a flame nurtured by careful breath. His growth was not loud or sudden. It was a steady expansion of his heart, a quiet strengthening of spirit, a deepening understanding of himself and the world around him. During peaceful walks home after training, Naruto often looked up at the Hokage monument, glowing beneath twilight. He felt a soft pull toward it, not the desire for recognition, but the desire to protect the warmth of the village that had slowly begun to feel like home. He imagined what it might feel like to carry such responsibility, not as a burden, but as a quiet promise. Over time, the village no longer felt like a world of strangers. It became a place filled with familiar faces, gentle routines, and moments of unexpected kindness. A shopkeeper offering him a friendly greeting, a villager thanking him for a small errand he completed, Sakura encouraging him during training, Sasuke offering a quiet nod of acknowledgement. These small gestures settled into Naruto's heart, weaving threads of connection where emptiness once lived. Naruto's growth was not defined by dramatic turning points, but by countless soft moments stitched together, moments of effort, discovery, warmth, encouragement, and quiet reflection. And with every step, the boy who once felt invisible became someone whose light reached others. A future awaited him, vast, meaningful, and filled with bonds he had yet to discover. But for now, in these tender years of training, Naruto simply grew, gently, steadily, and beautifully. While Naruto's growth unfolded like a sunrise warming the village, Sasuke walked a quieter, more introspective path, gentle on the surface, yet shaped by currents of memory that drifted through him like distant echoes. Tonight, we drift into Sasuke's early journey, not through turmoil or sharp emotion, but through the softer, quieter truths of a boy learning to navigate the lingering shadows of his past. From childhood, Sasuke carried a certain stillness, as though parts of his heart were pressed between the pages of a story he could not yet fully read. He often wandered the village with quiet steps, observing the world with thoughtful eyes. The rustling of leaves overhead, the distant laughter of children, the slow rhythm of life unfolding around him. These sounds settled into him like faint reminders of something once familiar, once warm. Sasuke's earliest memories glowed with gentle light. He remembered evenings sitting with his family, the soft warmth of shared meals, and the calm presence of loved ones who moved through life with quiet strength. These memories drifted through him like lanterns floating on a still river, beautiful, glowing, and impossibly precious. Even when life changed, those memories stayed with him, tucked safely in the quietest parts of his heart. As he grew older, his awareness deepened. He began to notice the subtle distance between the warmth he remembered and the emptiness he sometimes felt in the present. It wasn't loneliness exactly, but a soft echo, an ache shaped not by pain, but by longing. He yearned for the sense of belonging he once knew, the sense of safety and connection that childhood had offered so effortlessly. This longing became a quiet motivation, guiding his steps without ever raising its voice. Sasuke trained not out of ambition, but out of the desire to understand himself. He moved with grace, each gesture deliberate, each breath steady. His chakra flowed with a clarity unique to him, a cool, steady stream shaped by introspection and quiet determination. Often, he practiced alone beneath the old trees that bordered the training grounds. The breeze that filtered through their branches brought him comfort like a familiar whisper. The gentle sway of shadows across the ground reminded him that even darkness shifted with time, never remaining still for long. He would stand there, listening to the forest breathe, feeling its calm settle over him like a soft blanket. Though solitary, Sasuke was never entirely closed off. When Naruto and Sakura joined his life through Team 7, something in him softened, subtly, quietly, like ice melting beneath morning sun. Their presence was unfamiliar at first, yet comforting in a way he did not immediately understand. Naruto's energy pulled at him like a warm current, encouraging him forward even when he wished to remain still. Sakura's kindness offered gentle reassurance, reminding him that connection could exist without pressure, and Kakashi's calm guidance helped him breathe more deeply, grounding him when the echoes of memory grew loud. Sasuke rarely expressed these emotions outwardly, but inside, things shifted. He began to notice small moments: Naruto's laughter, Sakura's encouragement, Kakashi's quiet care, and these moments stitched new warmth into the spaces where silence had once lingered. The Chunin exams marked a subtle turning point in Sasuke's inner world, not because of challenge or tension, but because they allowed him to see how vast the world truly was. Meeting students from other villages, witnessing different movements, sensing varied chakra signatures, these experiences reminded him that life extended far beyond the boundaries of his memory. There were countless stories unfolding all at once, countless paths shaped by hope, duty, curiosity, and dreams. This realization opened something in him, a window through which fresh air drifted. It reminded him that while his past was a quiet shadow woven deep within him, his future was an open field waiting for footprints he had yet to make. When training grew more intense, Sasuke sometimes sat alone beneath the evening sky, letting the fading light wash over him. Twilight felt soothing to him, a time of transition where neither day nor night claimed control. It mirrored his own inner landscape, filled with both light and shadow, yet shaped by neither completely. These quiet evenings allowed him to reflect gently, to breathe, to feel the world settle into stillness. As he grew older, Sasuke began to see the subtle ways in which the village held him. A shopkeeper greeting him by name, an elder offering him quiet praise for his progress, a teacher nodding in acknowledgement as he passed. These small gestures reminded him of the invisible threads connecting him to others, threads he thought he had lost, but that had quietly been woven back into his life. Naruto and Sakura too continued to shape his path. Naruto's persistence softened his rigid edges. Sakura's steady support gave him something to lean on when the weight of reflection felt heavy, and through it all, Kakashi provided the gentle assurance that Sasuke didn't need to walk his path alone. Sasuke's journey was not one of sudden change. It was gradual, subtle, like the slow shift of a season. He learned that strength was not built through force, but through understanding. He learned that progress came not from pushing himself to exhaustion, but from allowing himself to breathe. And he learned that the shadows of the past, though part of him, did not define him. They were simply echoes, echoes he could listen to without letting them guide his steps. In these tender years, Sasuke's heart began to open in delicate, almost imperceptible ways. He allowed light to enter through small cracks. He allowed warmth to settle into places long untouched. He allowed connection to reshape him, softly, gently, at its own pace. And though he did not yet know what the future held, one truth was already unfolding quietly. Sasuke was not alone. He had a team. He had a village. He had a path that belonged only to him, and slowly, steadily, he began to walk it, step by gentle step. As Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke continued to grow within the warm embrace of the Leaf Village, there existed far beyond their daily world a quiet, drifting presence, one woven from longing, reflection, and stories that had unfolded in distant corners of the Shinobi lands. Tonight, we drift into the soft-hearted, symbolic understanding of the Akatsuki, not as a group defined by their outer form, but as individuals wrapped gently in cloaks that hid quiet sorrows, quiet dreams, and quiet truths. The Akatsuki's story did not begin with darkness. It began with yearning. Far from the bustling life of the villages, three young souls once looked out upon a world that felt too large, too quiet, too filled with unanswered questions. These children, Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato, sought not power, but meaning. They carried the ache of loneliness, the desire for connection, and the hope of building a gentler future. Under soft rains that fell like whispered blessings, they promised one another that they would someday make the world kinder, warmer, safer. This early dream, shaped by tender hearts and bonded friendship, became the foundation of what would one day be known as the Akatsuki. Even as their lives shifted and the world grew more complex, the essence of that dream remained inside them like an ember, flickering softly beneath the layers of adulthood, memory, and quiet sorrow. Over time, others were drawn to this dream, individuals from different paths, each carrying their own quiet burdens. Though their stories were often interpreted by history in grand, dramatic strokes, beneath those tales lived something softer, the simple truth that each person longed to be understood. Itachi, perhaps the most misunderstood among them, carried a silence so deep it felt like a still lake reflecting moonlight. To the world, he appeared distant, but inside, his heart held delicate truths, folded like paper cranes. His gaze, calm and steady, held neither coldness nor cruelty, only contemplation, compassion, and a quiet desire to protect what he cherished most. His presence within the Akatsuki was not born from malice, but from a path shaped by impossible choices and gentle intentions hidden from view. Kisame, often pictured as formidable, carried within him the tender heart of someone who had longed for acceptance. Beneath the surface of his imposing appearance was a soul shaped by loyalty and an almost childlike desire for belonging. His laughter, his conversations, his rare moments of softness revealed someone who sought companionship more than conflict, someone who cherished connection wherever he could find it. Deidara came from a place of artistic longing. His creations, ephemeral and expressive, reflected a soul yearning to be seen, to be understood, to have his vision recognized. His energy was bright, his eyes filled with the spark of creativity. He approached life as an ever changing canvas, exploring fleeting moments of beauty with passion that beneath everything stemmed from the desire for his heart's voice to be heard. Sasori, gentle in his quiet detachment, had once been a child seeking love that slipped through his fingers too soon. His fascination with preserving moments came from longing, from a yearning to hold on to feelings that time naturally carried away. His desire for permanence was not coldness. It was the soft ache of someone who feared losing the warmth of connection. Haydn, beneath the layers of ritual and fervor, held within him the heart of someone searching for meaning. His intensity masked the simple truth that he felt deeply and wanted his emotions to matter, to be acknowledged by something greater than himself. Kakuzu, often described through his practicality, had once lived through eras so long and shifting that he learned to guard his heart fiercely. Yet even he found unexpected camaraderie within the Akatsuki, small moments where shared tasks, shared paths, and shared silence brought him a sense of ease he seldom accepted. Conan, serene and ethereal as drifting petals, carried the original dream of her childhood like a folded letter she never allowed herself to lose. Paper was her comfort, her expression, her way of communicating emotions she struggled to voice aloud. She was gentle, observant, deeply caring, an anchor of quiet strength. And at the center of it all stood Nagato, a soul woven from sorrow, empathy, and longing. His heart held the reflections of every story he had witnessed, the joys, the losses, the moments of connection, the glimpses of hope. His path was shaped not by hardness, but by the weight of feeling too much. In his presence lived a profound tenderness, one that wished to heal the world, even when he felt uncertain of how. Each member of the Akatsuki carried something fragile inside them, dreams that faltered, connections that slipped away, hopes that outgrew their forms. Their cloaks, though often seen as symbols of mystery, were truly more like blankets, gentle coverings wrapped around souls who had known more solitude than most. And when they gathered, it wasn't merely for a shared goal, it was for shared understanding. In their silent rooms, under dim lanterns, they exchanged small glances that acknowledged familiar ache. In their quiet travels, they walked with the unspoken comfort of companionship. In their private reflections, they remembered the children they once were, each longing for acceptance, warmth as purpose, and belonging. The Akatsuki were not villains in the softest retelling of their story. They were wanderers, dreamers, souls shaped by quiet sorrow and quiet hope. Their lives drifted like leaves caught in different currents, sometimes apart, sometimes together, but always guided by the shared, tender wish that the world might someday understand them. And though Naruto would eventually meet the echoes of their actions, he would also meet the echoes of their hearts, discovering that even those wrapped in shadow carried light within them. Light shaped by longing, by hope, a step by the desire for peace. Tonight, we remember them not for the stories others tell, but for the gentleness hidden beneath their cloaks, for the fragile human truths they carried, for the quiet sorrow that shaped them, and for the soft dreams that lived within them still. Among the many clans woven gently into the fabric of the Leaf Village, none carried a legacy quite as delicate, as quietly profound as the Uchiha. Their story, often told with intensity, becomes something different when viewed through a softer lens, something tender, ancient, and filled with emotional echoes that drift like cherry blossoms falling slowly through a silent evening. Tonight, we explore the mysteries of the Uchiha, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a contemplative meditation on memory, perception, and the depth of the human heart. The Uchiha clan's beginnings were rooted not in ambition, but in sensitivity. Long before they became known for their eyes, they were recognized for their ability to feel deeply, so deeply, in fact, that their emotions resonated like quiet ripples across still water. They were perceptive, intuitive, moved by the subtle shifts in the world around them. Their hearts responded to the smallest changes in wind, in expression, in atmosphere. From this emotional depth their lineage blossomed. It is said that the first Uchiha were children who sensed the flow of chakra with unusual clarity. While others perceived chakra as warmth or movement, the Uchiha felt it as feeling, complex, layered, filled with meaning. A simple gesture could carry an entire story. A fleeting expression could reveal a whole lifetime of emotion. They understood others not through analysis, but through resonance. And from this resonance, their famous eye technique was born. The Sharingan, often spoken of with awe, was in truth the natural reflection of the Uchiha soul. When an Uchiha felt something profoundly, love, grief, hope, connection, their chakra shifted, flowing through their eyes in a way that awakened deeper vision. The Sharingan was never about power, it was about understanding. It allowed them to see intention beneath movement, emotion beneath silence, memory beneath experience. It was the physical expression of empathy sharpened into clarity. Because of this, the Uchiha lived with great emotional awareness. They cherished bonds with a depth almost unparalleled. Families were close not just in blood, but in spirit. Their homes were places of quiet warmth, filled with soft laughter, subtle affection, and traditions passed down gently through generations. Parents taught their children not only how to train, but how to listen to the heart, how to honor feelings, how to treat sensitivity as strength rather than burden. Within the clan, there existed small rituals meant to preserve harmony. Each evening, families would gather beneath paper lanterns and reflect on their day, not through structured conversation, but through simple presence. They believed that sitting together in silence could reveal more truth than 100 spoken words. Children learned early on how to sense the emotions of their elders, offering comfort where needed, sharing joy where it arose, and holding space when heaviness drifted through the room. Their clan symbol, the fan, represented their emotional nature. Just as a fan stirs air into movement, the Uchiha stirred feelings into motion, within themselves, within others, within the world around them. Their presence changed the atmosphere of a space, not through force, but through the quiet potency of emotion. Yet this sensitivity came with a gentle fragility. Because they felt deeply, they also loved deeply. And because they loved deeply, their hearts carried a quiet vulnerability. The loss of connection, the fear of separation, the ache of unspoken feeling. These emotions resonated within them with unusual intensity. But rather than viewing this as a weakness, the Uchiha saw it as part of their nature, a reminders that genuine connection always carries risk and that the heart grows stronger each time it chooses to open. Generations of Uchiha explored the spiritual nature of their abilities. Some meditated for hours beneath moonlit trees, seeking to understand how their emotions intertwined with their perception. Others kept journals filled with reflections and memories, preserving their inner world for future descendants. Still others gathered in small circles to discuss philosophy, contemplating how understanding could transform lives more gently than any technique. Among them, two children would one day exemplify the depth of the Uchiha spirit, Itachi and Sasuke. Their story, often recounted in sweeping dramatic tones, is far softer when felt from the heart. Itachi, even from a young age, possessed perception so profound it was almost painful. He carried the emotions of others within him as though they were his own. His gentle nature made him attentive, reflective, deeply compassionate. He sensed the first flutter of sorrow in anyone he met, understanding it before they could speak. His brilliance was not in skill, but in empathy. Sasuke, on the other hand, carried a quieter sensitivity, a stillness shaped by admiration, longing, and the unspoken desire to grow close to those he loved. He absorbed emotions slowly, carefully, letting them settle inside him like faint echoes. Where Itachi felt the world intensely, Sasuke felt it inwardly, holding memories with a quiet tenderness of his own. The Uchiha clan, as a whole, was like a forest of ancient trees, roots intertwined, branches reaching skyward, each tree holding stories of centuries past. Their eyes glowed not with power, but with memory. Their hearts beat not with ambition, but with depth. And though the clan would one day be remembered for bitter turns of fate, their true story, the soft, original story, was one of love and sensitivity and connection. It was the story of people who saw the world not through strength, but through feeling. People who cherished those around them with gentle devotion. People whose hearts, once opened, never fully closed. Tonight, as we drift through their history, we remember the Uchiha not for the burdens placed upon them, but for the quiet beauty they carried, for the emotional depth that shaped their lineage, for the eyes that saw beyond movement, for the hearts that felt more deeply than most. Their mystery, at its core, was never darkness. It was tenderness, so powerful, so profound, that it shaped their destiny like a soft but unstoppable tide. As the seasons turned and generations quietly unfolded across the shinobi world, a gentle but unmistakable shift began to ripple between the villages, subtle at first, like distant wind brushing across tall grass, then gradually becoming something deeper, something felt in the stillness between breaths. Tonight, we drift softly into this unfolding era, not as a story of war, but as a slow awakening, an emotional and spiritual transition where countless lives, countless histories, and countless dreams began to move toward one another, like tides drawn together by the moon. For many years, the villages lived in patterns that felt familiar. Children learned the ways of chakra beneath warm sunlight. Elders shared memories beneath the comfort of lanterns. Leaders guided their people with steady hands and minds shaped by experience. Yet beneath these calm rhythms, there existed threads connecting each village, threads woven from old agreements, quiet misunderstandings, and shared hopes that had never fully found their voice. These threads began to shimmer more clearly with each passing year. Villages sensed one another's presence, not as distant names, but as neighbors, each carrying their own joys and sorrows, strengths and vulnerabilities. And though old tensions lingered like faint echoes of past seasons, a new generation was rising, one more attuned to connection, one more willing to listen, one more ready to bridge the spaces that had long remained untouched. During this time, Naruto's world was expanding, and so was everyone else's. Messages traveled between lands more frequently. Leaders began gathering in rooms where long wooden tables carried maps, not of borders, but of shared futures. Children in different villages trained under the same sun, breathed the same air, and dreamed dreams not so different from one another. In the sand, the leaf, the cloud, the mist, and the stone, people began to feel the quiet pull of unity, a soft realization that peace was not merely the absence of conflict, but a tapestry of shared intentions, woven slowly and deliberately over time. Among the figures walking this path was Gara, who, after a long inward journey, now stood as a symbol of gentle transformation. His story, once shaped by solitude, began to shape others through its quiet strength. Gaara's presence brought calm to those who witnessed his growth, reminding them that even the deepest loneliness could find its way toward connection. His leadership carried a softness that resonated far beyond his own village, a sign that hearts could change and that hope could ripple outward like circles expanding across a pond. Meanwhile, leader across the world began to sense the delicate shifting balance. They held meetings where silence was as meaningful as speech, spaces where they listened deeply to one another, recognizing the shared desire for stability, protection, and understanding. Their conversations were not always easy, but they were genuine, shaped by the quiet recognition that every village wanted the same thing at its core, a life where children could grow without fear. As these relationships deepened, whispers of an emerging presence began to drift across the lands like low, distant thunder, too soft to frighten, but distinct enough to be felt. The Akatsuki's activities, though quiet and often misunderstood, cast shadows that stretched gently across the mental landscapes of leaders. Not shadows of fear, but shadows of question. What forces are moving through the world? What changes are approaching? How can we prepare not for conflict, but for unity? Individuals like Killer Bee, with his lyrical spirit and balanced heart, offered lightness to the world's shifting tone. His presence reminded everyone that joy, self-expression, and freedom mattered just as much as duty. His ability to live harmoniously with the tailed beast inside him served as a symbol of what was possible, of bonds formed through understanding rather than control. Elsewhere, Kakashi watched the world change with thoughtful eyes. His calm nature made him sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around him. He knew the world was moving, adjusting, preparing itself, but he also believed deeply in the potential of the younger generation, Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and countless others whose hearts held the seeds of a gentler future. These subtle movements gradually brought the villages closer. Letters were exchanged, agreements revisited, mistrust softened through dialogue. What had once been separations began to dissolve like frost melting beneath early morning sunlight. And yet, beneath all this, the mystery of the tailed beasts lingered, gentle, ancient, and interconnected. Their presence, once scattered and misunderstood, slowly became a symbol of unity rather than division. Leaders spoke quietly about their significance, their origins, their connection to the Sage of Six Paths. Many realized that understanding these beings required understanding one another and understanding themselves. As these truths came to light, Naruto's own path aligned naturally with the world's unfolding destiny. His heart, warm, open, and unwavering, drew people toward him, not through force, but through sincerity, not through speeches, but through presence. He inspired others simply by being himself, offering comfort where there was uncertainty, reminding the world that strength born from compassion was strength that could endure. Sasuke, walking his own reflective journey, shaped the world from a distance. Sakura, growing into her healing strength, shaped it from within. And Naruto, with his boundless heart, shaped it through connection, one person at a time. All these threads, stories, emotions, histories, slowly converged, not toward confrontation, but toward clarity, not toward division, but toward unity, not toward destruction, but toward understanding. The long road toward the fourth great ninja war was in truth a long road toward a collective awakening, a soft, dawning realization that the world was intertwined more deeply than anyone had fully acknowledged, a recognition that all shinobi, regardless of village or lineage, carried the same longing for peace. It was a time of gathering winds, not harsh or cold, but purposeful, guiding the world gently toward a moment where past and future would meet. And as these quiet currents continued to swirl, the shinobi world, once scattered like distant stars, began to drift closer into alignment, forming a constellation destined to shine brighter than ever before. As the shinobi world drifted toward a time of deeper unity, a quiet truth began to shimmer beneath the surface, something ancient, something soft, something woven through every life like a barely visible thread. Tonight, we drift into this truth, the gentle network of invisible connections that ties all shinobi together, binding their stories, hopes, and hearts into one shared tapestry. Destiny, in the shinobi world, was never a force of rigidity or control. It was a soft flow, subtle, flexible, and shaped by the choices of countless individuals. It whispered in moments of intuition, glowed in moments of connection, and revealed itself most clearly in those rare quiet seconds when someone felt deeply without knowing why. Long before the villages were established, this delicate web of connection had already begun forming. It stretched across mountains and forests, through rivers and valleys, touching every soul who sensed the world's quiet heartbeat. The Sage of Six Paths, with his deep understanding of the flow of chakra, was the first to perceive these threads. He saw how emotions, intentions, and dreams naturally intertwined, how one small act of kindness could ripple outward, influencing lives far beyond the person who received it, how a single moment of compassion could change a lineage, how a spark of courage in one heart could awaken courage in another. And even after the sage's time had passed, his teachings lived on, not through scrolls or monuments, but through the gentle, persistent ways shinobi connected with one another. Destiny was shaped not by prophecy, but by presence. Children learning side by side at the academy, friends sharing laughter beneath cherry blossoms, strangers offering comfort on long, uncertain nights, teachers passing down wisdom shaped by the experiences of those who came before, families preserving memories, hopes, and gentle rituals across generations. Each of these moments formed threads, threads that wove through time with quiet, unwavering purpose. Naruto, without realizing it, carried hundreds of these threads. Ever since his childhood, people had been connected to him through the emotions he stirred: compassion, curiosity, unexpected warmth. Even those who did not know him personally felt something shift gently within themselves when they observed him. His heart radiated like a beacon, soft, bright, unguarded. It touched others in ways he could not see. Sasuke too carried threads, though his were woven in quieter hues. People who met him often sensed something within him: stillness, depth, an unspoken longing for connection. His presence drew others not through brightness, but through resonance. Even from a distance, his path intertwined with the paths of many who recognized fragments of themselves in him. Sakura carried threads of understanding, threads that reached people through her empathy, her attentiveness, her ability to feel the emotions of others with gentle clarity. She connected through care, through insight, through the steady warmth she offered without expecting anything in return. Across the shinobi world, countless others carried their own threads. Gaara's threads of transformation, shining softly across the desert winds. Hinata's threads of gentle courage, woven through every quiet step she took. Kakashi's threads of experience, connecting generations through subtle, patient guidance. Shikamaru's threads of contemplation, intertwining minds through his quiet intelligence. Lee's threads of effort, reminding others that progress blooms through perseverance. Choji's threads of loyalty, extending warmth to everyone around him. Even the tailed beasts, wandering through lands in their ancient solitude, carried threads, threads that connected them not only to humanity, but to the world itself. Their chakra intertwined with rivers, forests, mountains, and sky. Their emotions echoed through time, creating bonds that would one day find their way into the hearts of people like Naruto, Bee, Gaara, and others who learned to see the beings inside them not as forces, but as spirits deserving of understanding. As these threads accumulated over generations, a quiet network formed, an invisible tapestry connecting every shinobi by shared struggle, shared compassion, shared hope. Whether they realized it or not, the paths of all shinobi subtly influenced one another. A gesture of kindness in one village could inspire change in another. A lesson learned on a remote mountain could echo in the heart of someone miles away. A bond formed in childhood could shape decisions in adulthood, rippling into the lives of others. Destiny in this world was a river fed by countless streams, and yet, this network of threads did not exist solely in moments of joy. It existed in moments of sorrow too. Grief softened hearts, teaching compassion in ways joy could not. Loss created empathy, binding people together through shared experience. Loneliness fostered understanding for others who felt the same. These heavier threads, though tender to hold, were what gave the tapestry its resilience. As the world approached the era of unity, the threads began to vibrate more clearly. People from different villages sensed one another's emotions more deeply. Stories traveled farther. Connections formed faster. Bonds that had once seemed improbable grew naturally. Naruto felt these threads as a gentle pull within his chest, a quiet knowing that his journey was not his alone, that somewhere others were walking paths connected to his, even if their footsteps were distant. Sasuke, too, felt a subtle tug, a reminder that no matter where he went, unseen threads still bound him to places and people who shaped him. Sakura felt this connection in the warmth that flowed through her healings, sensing the shared humanity of those she helped. The shinobi world, vast, diverse, shaped by countless lives, moved like a constellation, each star connected by delicate lines of meaning. Some connections were shaped by friendship, some by shared purpose, some by memories that lingered through generations, some by the wish for a gentler world. And as these threads pulled the villages closer, something profound began to dawn. The shinobi world had never truly been divided. Its people had always been connected by emotion, by history, by hope. The threads had simply been waiting for the right moment to shimmer into view. Tonight, we rest within that shimmering network, trusting that every step, every breath, every quiet act of kindness shapes the tapestry we all share. As Naruto continued walking the winding path of his young life, something subtle and beautiful began to change, not in the world around him, but within him. Beneath his bright laughter, beneath his determined footsteps, beneath the unshakable hope that carried him forward, there existed a quiet landscape, an inner world shaped by memories, emotions, and the gentle awakening of self acceptance. Tonight, we drift softly into that inner world, into the warm spaces where Naruto learned to embrace who he truly was. From childhood, Naruto's heart had been a mixture of longing and light. He carried dreams too big for his small frame, hopes too bright for the loneliness that often surrounded him. But as he grew, the world began to offer him something he had rarely felt before: reflection, moments where he could see himself, not through uncertainty, but through the eyes of others who cared for him. It started with soft, unexpected gestures. A simple meal shared with Uruka sensei, a gentle word of encouragement from Sakura, a quiet, steady acknowledgement from Sasuke, a warm, guiding presence from Kakashi. Each of these moments settled into Naruto's heart like soft pebbles dropped into still water, creating ripples of understanding that spread slowly, deeply, beautifully. At first, Naruto didn't understand this inner shift. He simply felt lighter, more grounded, more connected. But over time, he learned to sit with these feelings. He learned to recognize the warmth blooming inside him as something precious, something he had always deserved, but had never been given freely until now. In quiet evenings after training, Naruto often found himself wandering through familiar parts of the village, seeing them through new eyes. The lantern lit streets felt warmer. The gentle chatter of villagers felt softer. The rustling of leaves overhead felt like a lullaby written just for him. In these moments, he would pause, breathe, and feel the warmth within him echo outward, connecting with the world in ways he couldn't fully express. Gradually, Naruto began to speak more kindly to himself, to forgive himself more easily, to believe in himself more deeply. His inner world, once shadowed by uncertainty, grew brighter with each step he took toward acceptance. One of the most transformative relationships in this journey was his bond with Kurama, the nine tails within him. Their connection, often portrayed as fierce and overwhelming, becomes far gentler when understood through the quiet lens of emotional growth. For Naruto, Kurama's presence had always been a part of him, like a deep, low hum beneath his heartbeat. But for many years, that presence felt foreign, too large to comprehend. It was like holding a sealed letter without knowing what message lay inside. When Naruto finally began to face that inner presence, he did so not with fear, but with compassion. He sensed Kurama's emotions, layered, complex, shaped by ages of misunderstanding. And in those emotions, Naruto recognized something familiar: loneliness. The moment he understood this, something inside him shifted. A wall softened, a bridge began to form, a thread of empathy stretched between them. He spoke gently, not demanding connection, but offering it, just as others had offered connection to him. And Kurama, feeling this warmth for the first time, responded not with resistance, but with curiosity, with quietness, with the slow, tentative openness of someone who had long forgotten what acceptance felt like. Their early conversations were like walking through a dimly lit corridor where two figures approached one another with careful steps. They were different, yet similar, separate, yet intertwined, and as they continued to meet and understand one another, the walls between them dissolved into something far softer: mutual recognition. In this way, Naruto's greatest strength revealed itself, not in power or technique, but in the ability to see the heart within another, no matter how deeply it was buried. As their bond deepened, Naruto's inner world grew warmer still. He felt Kurama's presence, not as a weight, but as a companion, a friend, a source of strength shaped from shared emotion, a reminder that even the parts of ourselves we fear can become sources of light when treated with understanding. This acceptance radiated outward into Naruto's life. He was kinder with his teammates, more patient with himself, more open to the world. He began to sense the threads of connection described in the years preceding this moment, threads that tied him to Sasuke, to Sakura, to Kakashi, to Jiraiya, to Iruka, to Gaara, to countless others whose lives touched his. Naruto's inner world became a place of healing, a quiet sanctuary where hope settled like soft feathers, where memories blended gently with dreams, where loneliness transformed into belonging. He learned that true strength begins with understanding the self, that acceptance grows from compassion, that every heart holds both shadow and light, and both deserve acknowledgement. Sometimes, late at night, Naruto would stand on the rooftop of his apartment, gazing at the stars scattered across the sky. The cool air wrapped around him like a gentle embrace. In those moments, he would close his eyes and feel both the world and himself settling into harmony. He felt whole, not because he was perfect, but because he was growing, not because he was strong, but because he was learning to love every part of himself. And softly, gently, his path continued forward, guided by the warmth of acceptance, blooming within him like a rising sun. As Naruto's inner world softened and blossomed with acceptance, the ripples of his growth began to travel gently outward, touching lives in ways he never fully realized. For in the shinobi world, bonds were not simply emotional ties. They were threads of chakra, threads of memory, threads of shared experience that could reshape the very atmosphere around them. Tonight, we drift into these bonds, how they formed, how they deepened, and how they slowly changed the world. Every connection Naruto made carried a quiet resonance. When he smiled, something softened in those who witnessed it. When he offered encouragement, something awakened. When he believed in someone, something shifted deep within them. His bonds were not formed through power, but through sincerity, through the way he approached others, with an open heart, unguarded and full of possibility. These gentle bonds became lanterns, lighting the pathways of others, guiding them toward their own truths. One of the first to feel this was Iruka, who had watched Naruto grow from a lonely child into a young shinobi with unwavering spirit. Iruka's heart, once burdened by his own memories, lightened when he saw Naruto's smile. He felt the quiet strength in Naruto's conviction, and in return, Naruto sensed Iruka's faith like a warm hand resting on his shoulder. Their bond reshaped them both, Iruka finding healing in teaching, Naruto finding belonging in being cherished. Then there was Kakashi, whose life had long been woven with loss, resilience, and complicated memories. Naruto's presence touched something long dormant within him. He saw in the boy a spark of hope, a reminder that even the most fragile beginnings could bloom into extraordinary futures. Kakashi's mentorship became an exchange of quiet understanding. He offered guidance, and Naruto offered warmth. Together, they formed a connection that softened Kakashi's solitude and strengthened Naruto's resolve. Sakura, too, experienced the gentle transformation of this bond. Her early feelings, admiration, uncertainty, longing, gradually evolved into something deeper, a compassionate understanding of Naruto's journey and her own. She found herself inspired by his determination, encouraged by his resilience, comforted by his unwavering support. In return, Naruto grew because of her, learning patience, insight, emotional steadiness. Their bond was not one of perfection, but of growth, as two young hearts learned slowly how to see one another clearly. And Sasuke, though often wrapped in layers of introspection, felt Naruto's presence most profoundly. Their bond was delicate, woven from childhood memories, parallel experiences, and an unspoken understanding that each saw something important in the other. Naruto felt Sasuke's loneliness because he had known that feeling himself. Sasuke felt Naruto's sincerity because he had longed for sincerity in others. Their connection was like a bridge across a quiet ravine, fragile at first, but strengthened over time by mutual recognition. Beyond Team 7, Naruto's bonds gently shaped many others. Shikamaru, with his thoughtful nature, found comfort in Naruto's straightforward heart. Their friendship carried a balance, Shikamaru offering perspective, Naruto offering motivation. Hinata, with her gentle courage, grew braver each time she saw Naruto move forward with hope. His presence illuminated her world, like dawn slowly brightening the edges of the sky. Choji felt seen and valued through Naruto's kindness. Lee found inspiration in Naruto's spirit, mirroring his own belief in effort and perseverance. Gaara, whose story once mirrored Naruto's isolation, found healing in the bond they formed, a bond that connected two souls, shaped by loneliness but guided by light. These bonds did not exist in isolation. They formed a network, subtle, powerful, that seeped into the world around them. When one heart healed, that healing touched another. When one person grew, their growth lifted others. When one found courage, that courage echoed outward. The villages began to feel these ripples. Leaders sensed a shift in the emotional atmosphere. Teachers noticed changes in their students. Families noticed changes in their children. Something gentle was unfolding, something that could not be enforced through laws or agreements, but could only grow through connection. The shinobi world, long accustomed to moving in careful, separate rhythms, began to sense unity, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet transformation of hearts, through friendships that crossed village boundaries, through memories shared between travelers, through stories carried from one region to another. Love, acceptance, understanding. These were the catalysts that reshaped the shinobi world. A single moment of compassion could reach farther than anyone expected. A single smile could soften the hardest day. A single bond could weave two destinies together. And Naruto, moving through the world with innocence and courage, unknowingly gathered these bonds like flowers in a field, each one growing into something meaningful. As his connections deepened, the world responded. Paths that once felt rigid softened, tensions that once felt immovable eased, souls that once felt isolated found companionship. Every person connected to Naruto felt a small shift within themselves, an invitation to embrace kindness, to choose understanding, to see the world not as a place of division, but as a place of shared humanity. The bonds he formed became bridges. The bridges became pathways, and the pathways became a new map of the shinobi world, one drawn not by politics or boundaries, but by emotion, empathy, and the quiet, unmistakable truth that people shape one another. Tonight, we rest within these bonds, trusting that each connection, no matter how small, carries the power to gently reshape the world. As the shinobi world continued to shift toward unity, something subtle awakened beneath the surface, a long, slow exhale from generations of hearts that had carried quiet burdens. Conflicts, once woven deeply into the history of clans and villages, began to soften. Their edges smoothed, their echoes faded into gentler meanings. Tonight, we drift into this slow resolution, not through battles or clashes, but through healing, remembrance, and the tender understanding that time brings. Ancient conflicts, in their truest form, were never about anger. They were about longing, longing to be understood, longing to be safe, longing to protect what mattered most. Every disagreement, every fracture between clans, every quiet resentment that had grown over the years, all of it stemmed from the same human need for connection. But when connection felt threatened or misunderstood, people turned inward, guarding their hearts more tightly than before. For generations, this pattern repeated in many places. The Uchiha and the village leadership, the leaf and the sand, the cloud and the mist, the many small regions whose quiet tensions had stretched over time. But as new generations rose, children shaped by lessons, loved by mentors, guided by fresh perspectives, the old stories began to change. These resolutions did not arrive as grand announcements. They arrived gently, like the slow softening of winter into spring. The first signs appeared in the smallest moments. Shinobi from different villages sitting together during exams, exchanging quiet greetings, sharing meals, learning from one another. What had once been unfamiliar slowly became familiar. What had once been distant slowly became warm. When Gara became Kazakaj, the sand village began drifting more confidently toward harmony. His presence encouraged new conversations, ones grounded not in history's weight, but in compassion. Leaders from other villages sensed this shift and responded with openness of their own, acknowledging that understanding could bloom when old fears were allowed to rest. Even among the Uchiha's story, so often told with heaviness, there came a soft resolution. Through Sasuke's quiet reflections, through conversations shaped by honesty and healing, through the gentle uncovering of memories that had long been shrouded in misunderstanding, a truth emerged. The Uchiha were never the village's enemy. They were part of its heart, a branch of its spirit, a family whose feelings had been too deep to easily voice. In the years that followed, Stories of the Uchiha began to be retold with more empathy. Their sensitivity was honored, their struggles acknowledged, their contributions remembered with warmth rather than sorrow. This rewriting of their legacy was its own form of healing, a way of letting the past unclench its fingers, allowing new feelings to settle softly into its place. Other regions experienced similar tides of reconciliation. The Cloud Village became more open to cooperation, inspired by the bonds their shinobi had formed elsewhere. The Mist Village, once shrouded in cold isolation, began embracing gentler leadership and warmer traditions. The Stone Village, long steady and stern, allowed itself moments of reflection, recognizing that even the firmest earth can soften when touched by sincere intention. These changes were slow, patient, almost imperceptible in the beginning, but they grew. What truly accelerated this quiet resolution were the threads of destiny, the connections shaping the world from within. Naruto's bonds, Sasuke's journey of understanding, Sakura's devotion to healing, Kakashi's calm wisdom, Shikamaru's thoughtful leadership, Hinata's brave heart, Lee's unwavering spirit. Each of these individuals carried emotional ripples into the world, touching the hearts of shinobi far beyond their own villages. When someone feels understood, they understand others more easily. When someone is treated with compassion, compassion flows outward. When someone heals, their healing becomes part of the world's healing. This is how ancient conflicts began to dissolve, not through force, but through warmth, recognition, and emotional truth. One of the most symbolic moments of resolution came during a simple summit among the 5 Kage. There were no raised voices, no distrust, no rigidness, only quiet conversation, the soft scratching of ink on paper, and the sense that each leader truly wanted harmony. They looked around the table and saw not opponents, but different expressions of the same longing to create a world where their people could thrive. During this meeting, it was said that the light in the room seemed warmer than usual, sun filtering through the windows like a blessing, the air still and peaceful. Even without speaking it aloud, each leader knew that the time had come to let the past rest. Together, they shaped a gentle vision for the future, one where children wouldn't inherit old fears, one where villages collaborated rather than competed, one where understanding guided decisions more than memory did. This vision, though quiet, spread through the world like a soft breeze, touching everyone it met. Naruto felt it deeply. Sasuke sensed it like a low hum in his chest. Sakura saw it in the healing work she performed. Gaara felt it in the desert winds sweeping gently around him. B carried it in the rhythm of his voice, lifting spirits wherever he went. Even beings like the tailed beasts sensed this shift, feeling the world become less tense, less guarded, more open. The chakra flowing through the land became calmer, warmer, clearer. Ancient conflicts, once looming like distant mountains, faded into gentle hills, still present, but no longer casting deep shadows. And as the shinobi world began to settle into this new era, a quiet truth became clear. Peace isn't something declared. It is something grown, something nurtured, something built from countless small moments of compassion, each a seed, each a whisper, each a soft step toward understanding. The past had left its marks, yes, but the future was blooming with new light. Tonight we rest in that bloom, in the quiet way the world heals, in the soft truth that love outlasts division and understanding outshines memory. The shinobi world was changing, not with noise, but with gentleness. And through that gentleness, a new dawn approached. As the shinobi world settled gently into a new era, one shaped by connection, compassion, and the quiet dissolving of old conflicts, a single presence glowed softly at the center of this transformation. Not a hero in the traditional sense, not a legend carved from grand battles, but a young man whose heart had grown slowly, courageously, like a lantern brightening night after night. Tonight, we drift into a peaceful reflection on Naruto's legacy, understanding it not through spectacle, but through warmth, tenderness, and the gentle echoes of every bond he touched. Legacy, in truth, is not measured in victories. It is measured in hearts, in small moments, in gentle ripples that linger long after footsteps fade. Naruto's legacy began in childhood when he chose, again and again, to reach toward connection rather than away from it. Every time he offered a smile despite loneliness, every time he tried despite uncertainty, every time he believed in someone who did not believe in themselves. A quiet seed so was planted somewhere in the world. By the time he reached adolescence, these seeds had grown into small blossoms, soft changes in the lives of those around him. Iruka found healing through loving a child who reminded him of his own past grief. Kakashi rediscovered hope through teaching someone who never stopped trying. Sakura learned strength shaped by compassion rather than perfection. Sasuke felt a presence strong enough to reach him through the quietest shadows. Hinata found her courage reflected in his sincerity. Gaara rediscovered humanity in the warmth of Naruto's understanding. None of these moments were loud, none were dramatic, and yet each became a thread in the tapestry of a legacy that would one day reshape the world. As Naruto grew older, people began to sense something luminous in him, an energy that didn't come from chakra alone, but from a heart that refused to close itself. He listened deeply, even when words were few. He believed fiercely, even when doubt was heavy. And he cared with a sincerity that softened those who crossed his path. What made his legacy so powerful was not simply that he overcame hardship, it was that he kept his tenderness intact. He protected his ability to feel. He allowed kindness to guide him. He let compassion shape his decisions. In a world shaped by centuries of caution, his openness became a rare and precious light. Long before anyone spoke his name with admiration, Naruto's legacy had already begun, quietly reshaping the emotional landscape of the shinobi world. He changed the way people saw the tailed beasts, not as forces, but as beings with hearts and histories. He changed the way leaders approached one another, not with suspicion, but with the possibility of trust. He changed the way children viewed strength, not as dominance, but as connection. He changed the way the villages understood peace, not as an agreement, but as a practice. And still, Naruto himself never sought recognition. What he longed for always was connection. To be someone who could bring warmth to others. To be someone who could lighten burdens, even a little. To be someone who could stand beside others, sharing both joy and sorrow. This gentle intention guided him more surely than any strategy or technique ever could. He carried memories of the lonely child he once was, not as wounds, but as reminders, to treat others with softness, to include the excluded, to comfort the overlooked. This childhood perspective remained a quiet compass within him, guiding his interactions with humility and grace. Those who traveled with Naruto began to change themselves, not because he asked them to, but because his presence made it easier. Easier to forgive, easier to hope, easier to trust. The world noticed in subtle ways. A shopkeeper felt his own days brighten when Naruto greeted him with genuine warmth. A young student at the academy felt less afraid to try after watching Naruto's perseverance. A lonely child felt seen when Naruto offered a smile just for them. Even elders, wise and experienced, found themselves moved by his sincerity. His legacy was made of moments like these, quiet, human, profoundly simple. As the villages moved closer together, Naruto's influence rippled outward more widely. Diplomats felt encouraged by his optimism. Leaders felt steadier, knowing someone like him was growing into a figure of compassion. Ordinary families so felt inspired to treat one another with more gentleness. Naruto became, without realizing it, a living reminder that even the smallest acts of love could shape entire eras. And yet, his greatest legacy was not external. It was the transformation he sparked within people's hearts. Gaara, once isolated in his own quiet suffering, emerged into a warm, steady leader because Naruto showed him the truth of companionship. Hinata, once timid and uncertain, blossomed into a woman whose gentle courage touched countless lives. Sasuke, once lost in introspective shadow, felt a path open that led him back toward understanding and connection. Sakura, once burdened by self-doubt, became a healer whose strength supported the entire village. These transformations were not Naruto's achievements. They were the blooming of hearts he had touched simply by being himself. And that is the essence of legacy. Not control, not influence, but love that echoes quietly through lives, generation after generation. Tonight, as we drift through this reflection, we see Naruto not as a hero of legend, but as a warm flame in a world once dim with doubt. His light did not burn, it glowed, it invited, it comforted. His legacy is a soft one, a human one, a legacy felt in the smiles of children, the laughter of friends, the peace between villages, the healing between hearts. A legacy that will continue to warm the shinobi world long after his footsteps fade into memory. As the sun lowered over the lands of the shinobi world, its warm light fell across mountains, forests, rivers, and villages that had once lived in separation but now drifted gently toward a shared peace. Tonight, we settle into this twilight, into the soft, glowing moment when a long story rests, when the world exhales, and when all the hearts that carried this journey finally find a place to be still. The shinobi world, shaped by centuries of wandering paths, now stood in a quiet harmony. Every village carried its own colors, its own traditions, its own gentle rhythms, yet beneath these differences flowed the same deep current, a desire for connection, understanding, and warmth. The sand village, glowing with golden winds, carried the tender leadership of Gaara, his calm presence echoing through every street. The children trained with steady hearts, guided by teachers who remembered what unity had brought. The shadows of isolation that once lingered there had dissolved, replaced by a soft, hopeful openness. The cloud village moved with music in its spirit, voices rising in playful rhythm, footsteps light, hearts carrying joy. Bonds formed that spread easily outward, for the people of the cloud understood instinctively how to celebrate life. Their laughter carried far across the hills, reaching other villages like a gentle blessing. The mist village, once veiled in cold ambiguity, now breathed easier. Its lakes reflected clearer skies, its people walked more openly, and its future grew brighter with every generation that understood compassion more deeply than the last. The stone village, proud and steady as its mountains, softened too. With quiet reflection and renewed purpose, it entered the era of unity with patience. Its strength now shaped not by isolation, but by the desire to support the world around it. And at the heart of it all stood the Hidden Leaf Village, where the roots of so many stories intertwined. Its streets were warm with lantern light, its rooftops familiar to generations who had run, laughed, and grown under the same skies. Its people carried memories like gentle embers, reminders of everything they had endured and everything they had become. In this twilight, Naruto walked through these familiar streets with soft, unhurried steps. He no longer carried the restless energy of his youth. He carried something deeper, a warmth, a stillness, a quiet confidence shaped not by victories, but by love. He paused at the Hokage monument, gazing up at the carved faces bathed in fading light. He remembered moments of childhood awe, moments when he believed those stone figures watched over him. And now, in this quiet hour, he understood them differently, not as distant icons, but as people who had carried their own fragile hopes, their own doubts, their own dreams for the world. Naruto felt the breeze brush against his cheeks, gentle and cool. It carried the scent of evening, dust settling, trees breathing, the faint aroma of warm food drifting through the streets. He breathed in slowly, feeling the world around him settle into harmony. Nearby, Sakura walked through the village after a long day of healing. She carried herbs in her bag, memories in her heart, and a soft pride in knowing she had helped so many. Her steps were steady, but her eyes shone with warmth, each life she touched becoming part of her own growth. Sasuke, wandering through distant lands, felt the same twilight settle around him, an echo of home that reached him no matter how far he walked. His path was his own, shaped by reflection and quiet understanding. Yet the threads connecting him to the leaf, to Team 7, to Naruto, remained gentle and unbroken. He paused beneath a lone tree, looking out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace that took years to bloom. Even the tailed beasts, each in their own corners of the world, sensed the calm that now drifted across the land. Their centuries of wandering had softened into restful journeys. They were no longer misunderstood. They were embraced, acknowledged, allowed to be simply themselves. Their chakra pulsed in harmony with the world, deep, ancient, serene. The elders of the villages spoke of this era as though it were a gentle sunrise stretched across years, warming everyone who stepped within its glow. The younger generation barely understood the weight of the past, and that was its own form of healing. Their lives were shaped less by fear and more by possibility. Children from different villages sometimes met along shared roads, exchanging smiles, stories, and dreams. They did not see boundaries. They saw companionship. They saw play. They saw the world through the soft eyes of innocence, eyes untarnished by old rivalries, eyes that naturally understood unity. Teachers felt grateful, parents felt hopeful, wanderers felt welcome, leaders felt steady, and the world, for the first time in many ages, felt whole. In this twilight, the stories of the past settled like glowing embers, warm, steady, illuminating all that had led to this moment. The trials had softened, the losses had transformed into gentle wisdom. The fears had dissolved into understanding. The shinobi world breathed together. Villages no longer stood apart. They stood beside one another. Lives no longer moved in isolation. They flowed in harmony. Hearts no longer carried the full burden of their ancestors' sorrows. They carried the promise of a gentler tomorrow. Naruto sat beneath the familiar sky, feeling the warmth of everything he had lived, everything he had loved, everything he had healed within himself. He smiled softly, not because he had reached a destination, but because he understood the journey, and he knew the world was ready to continue without his guiding hand at every step. The twilight deepened, lanterns glowed brighter. The world became quiet. Peace settled like a blanket across the land, and in this quiet, a single truth resonated gently through every village. The story was not ending. It was resting, breathing, preparing for the soft dawn that would one day come. Thank you for drifting with me through this long, gentle journey tonight, a journey that wandered through memories, friendships, quiet awakenings, and the soft glow of a world learning to heal. As we reach the end, let your breath fall into a slower rhythm, like waves settling against a moonlit shore. Let your shoulders loosen, your thoughts soften, and your heart settle into a warm, steady calm. The world of Naruto, with all its bonds and quiet transformations, now rests behind you like a lantern fading into the distance, still glowing, still warm, still close enough to comfort you as you drift deeper into rest. And you, wrapped in your own quiet stillness, are free to let go of the day, free to sink into the softness waiting beneath your thoughts. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your breath deepens, let it guide you. If sleep begins to unfurl its wings around you, let it carry you gently wherever you need to go. Thank you for being here. May your dreams be warm, your night be peaceful, and your heart find a quiet place to rest. Good night.